that I've had this stream tonight. But games have been going pretty well, I'd say. Wow, you really did take it away from me, huh? Alright. That's what I'd say. I gotta choose that, because unless Chai's going to brick his own... Chai's going to brick his own awakening, but I still get speed. So I honestly don't mind that.
15 minutes later.
Ah! Sorry. Hi. That's a painful game to remember. Hello, everybody. It's your Wonderful Wind Mage, the Cruz Ship Captain, Chartreuse Proxy, ever at your service. Welcome back to the School of Omega Strikers, students. Today is lesson 4, and crucially the last lesson I'm presenting in 2023. We are on Mako's release patch at the date of this video's recording and editing, and I'm going to explain how to best build your strikers, either in a general sense and on a character-by-character basis, including all 21 characters at the time, once again, of Mako's release, and what should be the last character in Omega Strikers. Hopefully that doesn't prove true and we get a lot more. I will be covering exactly what you should be doing as a beginner or as a veteran in win conditions, alternate ways to build your strikers if you're not finding the traditional meta way of playing them to work, and crucially, how you can better fit your team in counter-drafting or drafting for your own teammates' benefit. Now, I want to put a disclaimer on this video first and foremost, that this is based off of my own experiences in Omega Strikers on the competitive ladder. I am mainly taking it from the high diamond to low challenger area, and I have almost over 300 hours in the game itself, but that does not mean I am an infallible source of information. If you find yourself working with a build or some awakenings on certain strikers that I didn't get to explain in the video, by all means do leave a comment and continue using it. This is just a good idea for a baseline for beginners getting into the game, or for veterans who might just want to try out a new striker and add them to their repertoire. So, let's get into it. Welcome to the editing void, everybody. Remember the previous lesson at the School of Omega Strikers, all centered around striking with intent? It is the same mindset I'm trying to teach everybody here about Awakening Draft. You are not picking traits just because, I think that's good for my striker. You are picking it for a reason. For the short-term game of the next set, or for the long-term game of scaling for your build. Are you denying enemy win conditions or creating your own? And this boils down to 3 main points. So let me move to the side for this here. You are either A, playing to your striker's win condition. Any of the big 3 extension traits, their Chrono Boost, Aerial, Super Surge, play well to speed strikers like Octavia, for instance, who need to maintain their flow state as long as possible, so that way they can beat the other strikers by man-marking them and just literally running past them. Size doesn't matter to them as much if they just get in front of you and strike the core first. Any way to keep flow state longer than just 3 seconds off the ball, making that 8 seconds, making that 12 seconds with every extension trait, makes it so much more threatening at all times. That anytime the cooldown's up, you are actively treating the enemy as you're actively making the enemy have to treat you as a threat. Juno with Hotshot goes super hard since all of her abilities create blobos, and well, she's going to hit the core one way or another. There's no way all of her blobos are ever going to miss the core at this point. You are basically getting 30% cooldown reduction on your entire kit at any time, and you're hitting them harder. You're hitting the core exclusively harder with those blobos. This is a fantastic awakening that feeds into Juno's main playstyle, and making every single part of her kit all the better. Or Rune, for instance, a Jet button with boost allows her to both defend and go on the offense whenever she feels like she can find a hard force angle with her forwards. Twin Drive now exaggerates the issue, and now lets her just basically charging with reckless abandon at most times, just to hit people for the raw stature damage, because you have a global dash. It's stupid, it's ridiculous, it's good, and that is one of her prime win conditions. Alternatively, you could go with option number 2, creating a new win condition that enemies might not realize is in your base kit, because you have that much more kill pressure or that much more range that they wouldn't expect otherwise. This can easily go down to knowledge checks, so of course, Core Strike Thief and the Rasmus's treasure, everybody. You can roll the footage anytime, Cruzy, in post-development. Estelle with any energy traits, but specifically Egoist, goes really well because she's one of the few strikers to have access to instant core flips. Core flip into Rose Warp, just 1-2, you can send the core at blazing speeds to where nobody can literally react to you. Or just other cheesy, weird things that people might not expect or forget that you have. So Dubu with Missile Propulsion can actually go pretty hard because both of his rollout, his Turbo Fortress and his Bamboozle not only go farther, but they hit farther. If you have somebody trying to dribble the ball into one of your corners, you can literally just hit them in the face with Turbo Fortress. And the extra range and knockback power that Missile Propulsion provides can literally either lock down the core, KO them at the corner of the field, or both. It's actually a very sneaky win condition past just Bamboozle's extra range at the midfield that can catch people off guard and easily lead to 3v2 conversions. That, and we look into number 3 on what you should be drafting towards: denying an enemy win condition. That means if you see an enemy Dubu on the field, you might even consider taking Missile Propulsion away from them because it's important. Are you looking to, you may look to that as counterdrafting or just straight up gear drafting. I'm looking at Vicious Vambrace at the bottom, for instance, if you're seeing enemy Kazans, S.O.S, Zentaros that really want to make you not play the game by KOing you all the time. So any way to deny a key win trait of KOs, so that goes into extra special for your 2 healing strikers. That would be Now and Atlas, the Celestial Intervention and Lifelink, or Lifeline, I think is what it's called. You know, you always get you almost always get only a single cast per set if it only goes to the minute before overtime. That every round. That means you always have a way to save your teammates, to keep the stature up, and prevent them from having to fall back or be KO'd on the field. And any defensive traits to deny the alternate win condition of KOs, especially with how prevalent the KO meta is. Catalyst. Yeah, Catalyst, Vicious Vambraces. Any Spark stacking or Stagger City stacking to just get you Stagger. Unstoppable if it was still in rotation. Or Stagger Swagger itself. Anything that can help you survive and let you continue to play your win conditions of controlling the core rather than having to play defensively and away from super offensive strikers is another way to draft. If you feel like you can just become a constant threat on the field just because they can't deal with you, they can't KO you, they can't find a way to cheese kill you and make it a 3v2 in the enemy favor, that is still an effective way to draft. And you should always be taking into account which of these 3 points are the most important to consider, and whether or not you think you might be able to pull it off, or if you might need to be denying an enemy from getting one of these 4 traits. Sometimes you're boxed into an unwinnable situation, and you have to make the best out of it. Specifically, when you see an enemy win condition on the table, yet taking it yourself means you completely brick one of your Awakening drafts. I'm using the opening clip in this video for example. We just won the first set, so I'm currently 1-0 against the enemy, yet Kai is ahead of me in draft. As such, he takes Timeless Creator away, the only creation trait on the table in the draft, so I cannot get it myself. Is this the right way to play the game? Well, at least in the clip, his team eventually did win the game due to me not having any creation traits, but the fact is, in the context of set 1, there are pros and cons to this decision. For Kai himself, he is making it easier for himself as a goalie to not have to deal with constant creations lasting forever, because with Estelle and Juno on my team, even just a second of holding the core means we could find a good soft or hard force thanks to a piercing shot, or just Juno Blobos completely controlling their half. He is playing for the long game and banking on the fact that his team can make a comeback from 0-1, because currently he is playing with only 1 Awakening, and that is Demolitionist. I, on the other hand, on the short term after this set, even though I don't get my preferred trait of Timeless Creator, I still do get a Spark, which at the moment is 10% speed. So I have 2 functioning Awakenings. I have Demolitionist and a Spark of Speed. I have a little bit more of a power spike now, and I also have a long-term win condition of stacking these Sparks. However, of course, in the longer term, because at the very least, the game's going to go for 2 more sets if it becomes a 3-0 shutout. There's only Monumentalist and Cast-to-Last left for creation traits, and I'm going to have to be contesting my own Juno for these possible options if it comes to, meaning that neither of us are going to be fully satisfied on how our creations are going to end up at the end of this game. We are going to fall off hard if we don't find a good win condition or if all the sparks show up at the same time, meaning that my draft is powerful now, but I need to close out the set. Kai himself, although he does draft to immediately shut me down, he really did his job enough of taking away one of my most important traits. Now, in the future, if Monumentalist comes up or so, I have to make the decision of, do I take it away from Juno or do I let her have it? Kai can easily just draft for himself in the future and take Chrono Boost, take Aerials, take whatever stuff to help his goaltending out, because I have only got the speed. I have not buffed up my abilities. His ability to goaltend just comes down to winning the strike war against me, basically. Now, he can exaggerate his power and support his own forwards more with extension traits to see he's running a jet button. This is not a clear yes, no, you should always deny traits and awakenings away from your enemies, even if you're playing Juliette or Kai, who have no creations and do not benefit from these traits at all. But this is just one clear example to where there are clear pros and cons to why each character picked their awakenings here. It will always come down to the exact context of your match, and at the very least for Kai, it did work out for him this time, but in another universe, he could easily just get 3-0 shut out because he's one awakening down the entire game. It comes down to your own decision making, and of course, what you deem to be more important at the end of the game. Do you think it's more important, if you were in Kai's shoes, to either build yourself up to try to support your strikers as an eject button goalie, or deny the enemy strikers their win conditions and just try to take them in a 1v1 at their current face value? That decision comes down to you, and there is no right answer at all times. It'll always be game dependent, and hopefully, with this information here, you'll have a better you'll be better informed to make these hard decisions when it comes down to your turn in the draft. Let's step back for a second though and talk about your build cohesion. Every game of Omega Striker is guaranteed to at least go 3 sets, meaning you are going to get at minimum 3 awakenings, which is enough to build an identity around your awakenings. And we are going to be talking about the 3 most prevalent ones in this video today. I am of course talking about the natural combos included in the game, being Stagger City, so bulk up, peak performance, and reverb, the energy battery build, so fire up, catalyst, egoist, and Sparked Exodia, so all 4 Sparks, plus the newly introduced and newly rotated out Spark of Leadership all together. Fact is, all of these builds feed into each other on core tenets. Stagger City, you get extra stats based on your match stagger, and well, they all feed into each other, easily as that. The battery build revolves around you generating energy through 3 different means. Extra energy when striking the core, extra energy when you evade, extra energy when you burst, extra energy when you get hit, and they all feed back into each other in a never-ending loop. And Spark Exodia is, well, it's Exodia. You build all the pieces together, they get stronger as you build more of them together. They all are clear ways that every person can build, and are a clear sign for newcomers to the game on how you can easily take into account drafts are going to go in future sets. The main thing that you always need to consider with these here is that, of course, not every one of these augments are going to be rotated in at the same time. So for instance, in the current now patch, Spark of Leadership is not in the game. Egoist is the only one out of battery build in the game, and Bulk Up is not in for Stagger City. But you can still find good accessories that complement the build, even if they're not going to be necessarily part of the main core. So for Stagger City, anything that helps you out with your main stagger, of course, will go well. You can weave in with the Spark of Stagger itself. That just gives you 450 stagger, so that's still going to be giving you your raw stats with your peak performance or your reverb. Like Big Fish gets you 200 stagger. Tempo Swing does damage and gives you lifesteal based on your match stagger, and you can just go farther with that, like Unstoppable, making it so that you literally can never get knocked around and get cheesed out for kills. Or scaling traits, so like Prize Fighter, which is not pictured here, or Stats on Stats, to where people have to KO you to stop you from getting to your full potential. You have 1,000,000 stagger. You're not going to be KO'd anytime soon. Same thing for battery build, anything that gets you extra energy or helps you to survive when you're trying to build this advantage up. So Quick Strike getting you more energy per strike. Any orb sharing traits on your friends helps you get energy from them getting the orbs. I put Stagger Swagger here as an example of just saying, hey, fact is, if you die with your core flip, you die with your core flip, and you lose the entire purpose of the energy build. You need to find ways to survive and make sure you don't have to use it for survival instead of using it offensively. And of course, Fire Up games. If it's in the opening Awakening draft, convince your entire team to take Fire Up, everybody. It's kind of ridiculous. Same thing with Spark Exodia 2. If you assemble all the pieces, Spark of Cooldown is what you're looking towards. For Prime Time, Twin Drive, of course, you'll just be getting both cooldowns at all times, so you're working with double your base abilities. And other traits too, like Glass Cannon, can scale really well, because since it's percentage-based speed that you're getting from Spark of Speed, well, that's just going to compound interest there. A little bit more damage would always be nice as well with Spark of Power. It just all compounds from there. Fact is, you can always try to find a way to to focus in on a core part of your kit, or a way to make your ability kit a jack of all trades. Whatever it is, you are trying to make yourself distinct from your striker, or you're trying to make your one key tenet of your striker very, very key and powerful. Are you going to play battery build, for instance? That means you are making it so you are always a threat on the field on the offense in case people try to hit you away from the core. On the defense, since you can just evade at any time, and you are helping your teammates at all costs. You are the win condition for the whole entire energy game, and you need to focus entirely on not just core control, but making sure you don't get KO'd. Chartreuse City is easily one of just the simplest things of you have so much more pressure since you cannot die as easily. You have basically 1-2 just about abilities worth of damage that you can take more than the average striker, and you start finding ways to branch out this advantage with tempo swing, with stats on stats, etc, etc. And Spark Exodia is also as self-explanatory. You are trying to leverage the fact that you have enhanced base stats and weaving it into a stronger ultimate, a stronger like primary, secondary ability, and finding ways to make these builds work for you. And if you see somebody drafting for these builds, it all comes down to counterdrafting and stopping these key win conditions. Of course, that comes down to denying somebody the final piece of Exodia, or denying somebody a key win condition that would come natural to them, like creation traits. One main thing to remember when you're building laterally towards these specific Exodia builds is that they can only show up once per game, meaning if you see 2 Sparks in the opening Awakening draft or just during any draft after a set, you will never be able to build the full Exodia just because they are completely locked out from ever appearing again. Remember that Odyssey only gives you 34 Awakenings in the pool every single micro patch, and they will still continue to rotate in and out even after the game's service. So, you should always check the library at the top left of the in-game menu to make sure you're working with your preferred Awakenings, and might want to tune your striker pits accordingly. Remember as well that I am making this video at the time of Mako's patch, so for example, Orb Exodia is currently out, so I didn't include it in my initial build paths, but I'm going to future-proof this video by having all striker-specific sections featuring Awakenings that are currently in, and Awakenings that are currently out, like Tempo Swing, at the time of this video's recording here. That way you can always make informed decisions and come back to this video even after this game's lifespan has been gone. Now, I'm going to be dividing everything into 2 graphics here when I go into my striker-specific section. It is going to be green squares for best in slots, or yellow squares for alternate win conditions. Best in slots are crucial, essential parts to your striker's core that makes whatever they're great at even better. Extensive traits for Octavia, maybe Twin Drive for Rune, maybe extra special for a good amount of the cast, honestly, here. These are traits that you always want to be gobbling up if you're first in draft, or denying from the enemy if you're ahead of them in draft, if it helps you and you feel like the risk is worth it. These fundamentally make your striker that much more distinct in the field, and make them that much more of a threat. Yellow ones are alternate win conditions, which might provide some benefits, but mostly serve as either counter pits or different ways to play your striker. Key ones that come to my mind immediately would be Finii or Juno packing a lot of power traits, as even though they're more focused on core control, this actually does help them out with their speed for their creations, and can sometimes help them with cheesing out kills. This also comes to mind with gear, as I'll be highlighting goalie and forward gear for everybody, so it comes to a fault for characters like Rasmus on Ai.Mi Zap. You're gonna be taking pummels, my dude. That's just how the facts are. So, I'm going to start with everything in alphabetical order, with Ai.Mi and ending with Zentaro. So, let's get into this section. With a nickname that represents my internet experience in all of my Mega Strikers games, it's the girl who glitched Ai.Mi! Ai.Mi is a respectable striker with a very high skill ceiling, and lots of pressure across the map, having 3 different versions of hard force abilities that cut off angles and force enemies to have to make plays, lest she steal the courts directly from their feet. She functions pretty well as a glass cannon when she's playing from the doorway position, using a jet button and Cyber Swipe's increased range to pressure enemies with the hard force stun of the impact. Or you can play a little bit more defensively and just impact from range with Glitch Pop and Firewall Sentry having that increased range thanks to Strike Shot. You may feel like you're giving up the Cyber Swipe potential, but don't worry, there's still lots and lots of weird creative plays you can make out of it. When in the forward position, Ai.Mi doesn't have to worry as much about dribbling as the other strikers, since she can make up for it with Glitch Pop's 1-2 punch range, and the Cyber Swipe actually just being a better force since you stun the goalie and hit the core at the same time. So usually you'll see Magnetized Souls to get into position, but you also might see Cyber Swipe being used offensively with Pummels, or even Siphoning Wand if you get hits on Firewall Sentry multiple times to wear enemies down. You're looking at cooldown traits mainly just because Firewall Sentry is one of the most oppressive ultimates in terms of area control. So Perfect Form, Hot Shot, or any cooldown traits, so like Reverbs and Spark of CDR, are just what I have at the top of the table. Alongside, I have Glass Cannon as a high priority because you need to put yourself in a good position for Firewall Sentry to hit, you need to put yourself in a good position for a Glitch Pop angle, etc, etc. It's all about putting yourself in a good position for your projectiles to actually have impact, because it's one thing to hit the core, it's another thing to hit the core in the direction you want. If you're going more on the offensive side, you can go Prize Fighter since every single tick of Firewall Sentry is going to hit that much harder, and you can actually choose between whether you want to go for more speed or more size, as Ai.Mi can flex between both different for the extra impact hits from Glitch Pop and Cyber Swipe, or even among giants, because she can just make better use of the speed and just scale a little bit better with Glitch Pop if you want to focus in on that more than Cyber Swipe. Do note that it does scale off size a bit though, so it's just give or take whatever your playstyle is. That's why it's an alternate win condition. When it comes to Cyber Swipe, any of the big three are going to be good for you. Aerials helps out your projectile range for Glitch Pop and Firewall Sentry. Super Surge makes it hit harder, so that feeds into if you're going for that Prize Fighter, Glass Cannon, extra power win condition. And Chrono is just for the range really, but that's because the main thing that people forget about Ai.Mi's Cyber Swipe is that there's the immediate hit at the very end of the cone, but sometimes you can trick enemies whenever you're on the offense or even when you're goaltending. If the core is way past and you have to Cyber Swipe backwards, you can blink before the core, or if you landed at the very tail end right next to you of the cone, you can actually Cyber Swipe and immediately strike to send it a different direction, meaning that you have a good amount of outplay potential if you Cyber Swipe in front of it and people have to clear away or evade to dodge your hit or get stunned, and then you redirect it from one side of the field to another. So you have a good premium with any of the big three, and also Twin Drive as well, of course, to have your pressure on here. I'm looking at Fight or Flight mainly for the cooldown refresh, as especially if you're playing goalie Ai.Mi with the jet button, you can just easily pick off somebody who's low, like just Cyber Swiping into them, blinking back, and you already have your CDR. And like I mentioned before, if you want to play into the win condition of both different, it is a little bit harder hitting impacts. Glitch Pop also being an impact helps out in that end with heavy impact, the Awakening, as you're hitting the core and somebody else to stun, you're getting the CDR, same with Cyber Swipe. Deadeye is going to be crucial here, along with missile propulsion, since you're just going to be looking to just get as much range as possible, and since the projectile grows as it goes farther. Prime Time's also just great as well, and Rapid Fire is not pictured, but that's just pretty obvious to say. Because it's a hard force and stuns people, you don't care about if it's getting weakened by the hits, because you have 2 charges from Prime Time, you're just caring about actually hitting the core. Now, Firewall Sentry being accretion means Ai.Mi can index into this route pretty safely. Monumentalist, in my opinion, is a lot more impactful than Timeless Creator, because if you put the core in the corner of a map and then lock it down with Monumentalist, the bigger hits are a lot more important than the duration, because you're naturally going to be pushing the core alongside the enemy mouth, alongside the enemy goal mouth. Once it gets out of there, Timeless Creator doesn't really have a good impact because, you know, once the core is away from your sphere of influence where you put the sentry, it's a dead awakening. If you can make the area of effect a bigger deterrent and make it harder for people to have to deal with, that's just my personal opinion. Both are still great, but if you had both in the same draft, I take Monumentalist over Timeless Creator 90% of the time. Extra Special is just so good, especially on 1 barrier maps like Athens City or Inky Splash Zone, because you can immediately win the first touch with your ranged abilities, and then Firewall essentially wherever the core gets led to cut off one of the enemy strikers or even the goalie, and just cascade your advantage from on there. And Missile Propulsion is also, once again, I'm pointing out for Glitch Pop, but really good for Ai.Mi, because since it goes all the way to the goal mouth now, if you put it at the very edge where the corner of the door mouth is, the goalie has to either evade and get past it to strike, or they can eat repeated hits, and if you have enough power, you can even KO them if they're standing too far back in the goal. This can present a lot of weird, easy, cheap kills, and put a lot more pressure on the enemies if you take missile propulsion. Other things to, of course, take note is specialized training. It's great, of course, but you're looking at it to really cut off, but you're using Firewall Sensor to really cut people off more often than not. So because of that, you might not get the immediate power advantage, but if you already have Prize Fighter, it's just really good to rack on damage. 1-2 punch is pretty natural. Even if somebody doesn't get hit by 2 Firewall Sentry bursts, you immediately Cyber Strike with Glitch Pop afterwards to deal in more damage. And Knife's Edge too, because remember, since it's a lasting creation, if you're a goalie too, you can just let it fly, stay near the edge, and you're already getting that 40 power on every single hit from Firewall Sentry. You have a lot of cool, crazy outplay potential. You have a lot of ease of use when it comes to dribbling the ball thanks to your range. And it's just all about setting up where the Firewall Sentry is and making sure that you can convert off of the advantage you get from striker KOs or from the corner that you're riding the core with and sending it on to make with your 2 hard force abilities whenever you're playing Ai.Mi. Let's talk about the unbreakable wall that is Asher. For what she makes up for in completely locking down the core on a specific part of the field, she lacks in movement speed. Anytime you see Ashers as goalies, you'll either see her as one of 2 forms, either making use of Pauldrons alongside Big Fish or both differently to really just buffer out every hit and just say, I barrier beam you. You literally cannot get past me. Or more commonly, Momentum Boots, because Breakthrough is a sadly pitiful dash. As I already stated, both Diff and Big Fish are essential to your Asher kit because you need to bully and just win any strike war with your barrier beam or just strikes by themselves, and as such, Crit Swipe follows soon after. I put Spark of Speed there, but that's just because you just need speed in anyhow. Because Breakthrough does get you a damage reduction buff for using it on your side of the field, and with just the innate, close rangeness of your abilities, Stats on Stats is pretty nice on Asher considering you can find good ways to easily survive. And quite frankly, any stagger city traits that give speed, so peak performance, onside Stats on Stats, will really help you out on this side here. Special props goes out to Demolitionist since you want to be hard forcing and using all of your abilities to tear down the goal barriers, meaning that you can easily use Breakthrough Barrier Beam into refunding your cooldown on Pass Splitter all in one, and Cast Last. It being a buff, meaning Breakthrough gets its duration extended, and you get longer creation on, well, Barrier Beam and Pass Splitter, of course. When it comes to Breakthrough, I'm looking at Fight or Flight, not necessarily for the stagger, not necessarily for the refreshment stagger, but mainly because it's Diet Slit Kits, which you need as a forward. Slit Kits. You need that extra speed to retain core control, because you need to dribble and hold it to where you can get right to the goalie's face and then Barrier Beam on them. Barrier Beam. As much as you possibly can here. I put Chrono Boost as an example of the buff state, but quite frankly, you can just take any of the big 3 just for the fact of it being a dash extension, because it is a slow hulking dash, but you'll take any range you can get. And Twin Drive, of course, but especially as a goalie, you need to retain this as much as possible, so having 2 uses is going to be really important. If it ever gets rotated back in, Unstoppable makes Breakthrough an even more impressive ability for enemies to have to deal with, considering you are going nowhere, no matter where you are, casting it on your side or the enemy side of the pitch. And, well, Glass Cannon is just going to help you out tremendously anyway. Barrier Beam being an impact means you can look at heavy impact, not for the damage necessarily, but for the cooldown reduction, since you're going to be likely hitting the core and an enemy with this. 1-2 punch, Breakthrough, Barrier Beam, those exist in a capacity to each other. That's really just it. That's literally it. It's nothing too special, even though I put Investments on. That's really how it comes out to be. So you'd be looking at, Prime Time, Rapid Fire. I know I have it as an old win condition here, but fact is, like, you're only, like, the core, if the core comes to your feet by a good pass, you're going to be using Barrier Beam anyway. You need to be prioritizing actually being able to retain the core first and foremost, so that's where it comes out to be. Now, granted, the cooldown traits for Rapid Fire come better if you are playing a bully, if you're playing a go bully Asher and taking pummelers instead of Swift Kits, and you're just looking to power yourself up with Prize Fighter, for instance, and just laying, like, literally, just using Path Splitter to force somebody into a corner, or force out their evades before just laying into them with the rest of your kit. But I'm looking at this as what I see most Ashers in higher ranks are, which is switch kits. I'm not saying it's an invaluable thing, but you are routing yourself into a very, very slim win condition, and you are just as slow as Juliette with pummels if you aren't getting these kills. Now, you actually do want to index into creation traits if you're playing Asher, as Path Splitter is pretty darn oppressive. Monumentalist over Timeless Creator anytime, because, you know, it will, like, after a few hits, the barrier shields will go down, but the fact that they can hit harder and be bigger means you can really just strike the core in the corner, lock it down for free dribbling, and then just bow your way just by way of pure force to the goal. Same thing with extra special. Sometimes you literally just get to lock a forward in jail if you find them in the corner and just get to play ball by yourself or pass it to your teammates. Path Splitter is very versatile in just saying, I'm going to either lock you down or lay all my abilities into you. And as such, you are looking for ways to either force that advantage on the core or force a 3v2 advantage by hitting a striker with it. I'm not saying Timeless Creator is bad, but, you know, it has its extra size, I guess, but you're looking for that extra hit, especially so with combinations with Barrier Beam if you're going to be bullied. Ashers, especially so if you are supporting an Asher who has switch kits, or, well, supporting an Asher in general, you need to feed the ball to her if she's a forward. If she's your goalie, you can easily let her do her own thing and act as a second layer of defense, but otherwise, you are going to be looking at drafting or helping her draft around these speed augments or size augments and letting her take control of her side of the pitch. She can be very self-sufficient, but she needs to get the core first and foremost. Atlas, the Steadfast Protector, is a pretty simple striker when it comes on paper. You are just looking for creation extension traits and speed to make up for the lack of one of your biggest weaknesses in verticality. You can't cover vertically with Cosmic Expanse or Astral Projection, so it all comes down to you putting yourself in situations where you can cover everything else that comes directly your way. As a goalie, you'll always see momentum boots taken about 90% of the time, but Strike Shot can help out in case you're going against enemies with harder forces that you feel a simple shot with Strike Shot, or the extended range of Astral Projection can stuff a lot easier. When it comes to being a forward though, you definitely need one of the speed traits. Magnetized Souls, usually I see a little bit more since Atlas has a lot more trouble getting the core and retaining it with switch kits by himself, since he doesn't have a good natural dribble unless he wants to burn one of his cooldowns, which are already extensively long. But it can work in some situations, on more congested maps that have closed off barriers like Taito Temple, or if you want a good Clarion Core, Clarion Core configuration, so like the Drek'ar if you get the Drek'ar's smoke configuration if you get one of the corners and just get to bully with creations like any other creation striker. You need to have yourself one of the creation awakenings just straight up in your kit first and foremost. The fact that Cosmic Expanse and Social Intervention both get benefits from this are huge, and people need to remember Cosmic Expanse slowly goes down if it hits somebody or the core, but with Timeless Creator, it makes its range not only bigger, of course, but the duration, meaning it slowly goes down slower than usual, and it can easily throw people off, kind of like a long-lasting Rune anomaly if they keep trying to strike back and just being like, I can time it out. Hot Shot's great, of course, since Astral Projection just stuffs any enemies and will probably hit the core on its way back. Same with Cosmic Expanse, it'll probably hit the core, like, you're using it defensively, and as it expands out, if it hits the core first, that's great. Team Player is pretty crucial for him, in my opinion, considering if he's going to lose core, since he's looking for prevention more than anything, so he needs to get the core out of his reach if he's playing as a goalie and into his teammates. And once again, just speed traits in general. Stats on stats is great for him since he has Social Intervention to save himself and retain those. Any orb stacking traits, but Ponder, of course, is going to be good for his long cooldowns. Quick Strike as a goalie is just natural, and Fire Up can also exist in case you feel like you want to be the energy battery for your team, since you can take punishment if you have Catalyst to go with it, and if you continue building that energy Exodia build with Egoist to help out his natural lack of speed. Cosmic Expanse desperately needs Twin Drive, especially as a goalie. Enough said. Glass Cannon helps you get yourself in those positions since it originates from you, of course. And I put Reverb here as an example, but you're probably looking at Spark of CDR instead, since you don't have to worry too much about your staggers since you have Social Intervention. Orb Wanderer is also pretty nice as well if you're playing goalie, since you always have the one Bat Orb spawning in every rotation, so you get that for free. And, well, once again, it's just speed, 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 speed. You need to set yourself up for success. Otherwise, your secondary, it doesn't matter how big your secondary is. If you're casting it from a bad position, it's a bad position. Astral Projection, being a good stop to hard forces, doesn't care for how hard it's hitting, so prime time's great, even with the reduced power. Rapid Fire is, of course, good. And people would be surprised at how hard Missile Propulsion Astral Projection can go, and how much it can hurt against people who keep trying to bash their face into it, or to Juliette stuffing their dash punch. When it comes to Celestial Intervention though, I will admit, because it only has a creation trait and not a buff trait or so, you're really only benefiting from either extra special or specialized training for quantity and quality, of course. The main thing that people need to remember is that you can strat Celestial Intervention pretty easily. It's about a 50-second plus cooldown, depending on what patch that you're playing on. Meaning, every round, Atlas gets one use unless he has some sort of natural cooldown before overtime. So it's pretty easy to track without that much intuition, but when it comes to actually getting to use it, you want to actually put it in the center of the field or where the core is. As remember, if somebody gets saved, they are dragged to where the field is, and they only heal if they're in the Celestial Intervention zone. So your Creation Awakening traits, once again, are the biggest premiums, and you can use it proactively in just getting people stagger back, or reactively in trying to bait out enemy burst, abilities, or ultimates if it means they're trying to KO your strikers before you bring them back from the brink of defeat. Do not put it in your goal unless you have to play defense, because although your striker has been saved, they are now basically acting as if they respawned and need to work their way back to where the core actually is. Put it in a forward position and let them get back into the fight as soon as possible. You have all the options yourself to defend, with Cosmic Expanse just hitting anybody on the way in, Astral Projection being a get off me tool, and if it really comes to, you can actually just plop it down on yourself. But it's all just about positioning yourself with good speed and making sure that you can always keep the core in your striker's control and making sure they always stay in the fight. Simple, clean as that. Drek'ar, the intimidating invader, brings a gun to what is essentially anime air hockey. Yeah, everything will revolve around lock and load, don't worry guys. Whenever you see people playing as Drek'ar, you are looking for ways to cut off angles with Xenocloak, not from you speeding up with Xenocloak, but you cloaking early whenever the enemy has the core control, or you cloaking when your teammate forward has core control. You cut off passing lanes or create new ones, because people are going to be uncertain as to where you are. If you can cut off one crucial pass, it would have been a game-winning play, for instance. Now the enemy is going to have to start doubting themselves on, do I clear to my teammate now, or do I continue trying to force the 1v1 on the enemy? Now you're cutting off that lane intrinsically just by cloaking, and you can easily start forcing your own agenda on the enemy, which is everything that Drek'ar wants to do, since he has one of the most natural 1-2 progressions in Strike into Lock and Load, especially at close range. As a goalie, Drek'ars usually take one of two main paths. Eject button helps him out with extending Xeno close range and allowing him to sow even more distrust among the enemy strikers on where they want to pass the core to. Or you might see him just go strike shot if you want to play a lot more defensive and act kind of like a multi-use of Kai's Barrage with lock and load. The extra projectile range means that you can easily clear from across the pitch and help your team retain core control without even having the core pass the midfield line back to your side of the field. I put Drek'ar as more of a midfielder with magnetized souls here, but honestly, he can work with actually any of the forward gears pretty well, honestly. I mean, siphoning ones for the obvious will just be hitting people with lock and load constantly. Magnetized souls, I thought of it more because especially if you take Xenocloak, if you press Xenocloak with magnetized, you speed up pretty tremendously well when you're off the ball, but Switch Hits isn't actually too uncommon if you need to stall for time for your lock and load to come off cooldown, or if you're trying to get it to the corner so you can hit the core and the goalie with the cone in front. It's not too bad. And I also see pummelers every now and then if you find yourself on the side of a very offensive team comp, and you can easily convert staggers into kills. On the General Awakening side, Missile Propulsion is one of the most obvious things. It affects your 2 damaging abilities. Hotshot's great since you're always looking to hit the core with both of them, so you get the CDR and even more core speed, which can throw people off considering how slow the core will naturally go with a lock and load hit. And any ways to either extend Xenocloak's duration or extend Drek'ar's own survival/range. Stature Swagger is wonderful, as if you don't have Xeno Coat off cooldown, guess what? You are moving fast, then when it comes on cooldown, you just press it, you are moving at almost 200% MS. It is wonderful, it is weird, people wonder how the heck they can even defend against it. It is just wild. And of course, Castellast makes Molten Bolt that much more potent, as you get the entire debuff benefit, you have Xeno Coat for the entire buff benefit, and guess what? If you hit somebody with the Molten Bolt, they are slowed forever. If you hit the core with Molten Bolt and it goes around to everybody else, they are all slowed forever, ticking down. You can choose to either take the core by yourself, or just unload both your Lock and Load pellets into them. It's absolutely hilarious how slow people get, especially if you're point blank range. Drek'ar, interestingly, doesn't care too much about size in relation to speed, considering none of his traits really scale with size, so he's just looking to get better range on his locking load, so among giants isn't too bad. And if you're looking, once again, at a more offensive team comp, Prize Fighter, Adrenaline Rush are great for just Molten Bolt, shot with locking load. When it comes to Xeno Coat, it can fall a little on the wayside on its potency for out-mind gaming enemies if you don't have Twin Drive at times, since especially so, once it's off cooldown, people know, alright, I just have to worry about these weirder, longer passes, and sometimes if I'm carrying the core, I just stand in front of where Drek'ar is trying to be. I eat up all of his shots. So, having a secondary use of your secondary is pretty nice on those circumstances, and same thing with Fight or Flight. It helps you if you took magnetize for Slick Kit's diet budget again, and of course, if you get stagger or if you stagger somebody else, you just zoom in, and they really don't know where to stand in that case then, so you can just easily combo them to death. Aerials and Chrono Boosts aren't too bad either. Aerials, of course, extends your projectile range for both Lock and Load and Molten Bolt. Chrono Boost gets you an extra buff duration, considering its secondary trait is buff, and, well, if you really feel like you need to control with size, just because you're getting outman-marked, I mean, Build Div can kind of help. I mean, it helps out Lock and Load a little bit, but it's not the biggest priority. That's just, once again, alternate win condition, alternate game plan if the Among Us Giants doesn't work out. When it comes to Lock and Load, of course, you are looking at just anything that just keeps you off cooldown. Rapid Fire, Prime Time, since it's a light hit, Heavy Impact traits, you'll be hitting the core and an enemy most likely all the time. Your Kill Pressure traits of 1-2 Punch are wonderful, since you can really just 1-2 shot people, Molten Bolt shot people, Stinger, of course, since it's a pellet spread, you'll be hitting more than 2 people at certain times. And then when it comes to Molten Bolt, you have actually a wide variety of weird options. Of course, the big two of Extra Special and Specialized Training are going to be wonderful. Specialized Training making it so that Molten Bolt, if you land it on somebody directly, can actually literally shred half of their stagger bar base without any traits, is actually so deceptively good at putting pressure on. And on that side note of it, Glass Cannon's great for keeping up that damage and letting you just run up to their face and blast them with a shot full of pellets, along with Nice Edge, since you can easily use that extra speed on the Xeno Coat to make it so that people can't shark you when they see you activating the Awakening. Now you run up with all of that increased speed, hit them in the face, and 1, 2, 3, bolt, lock, and load KO. It's pretty nice, but the main thing that you're always looking for with Drek'ar is that you're looking for core control first and foremost by cutting off these angles. All of the kill stuff that I'm mentioning here is a secondary alternate win condition once again. Primarily, you don't want to be unloading Lock and Load into enemies just willy-nilly, since you need both cooldowns at times to really force the goal in past the goalie themselves. If you have allied strikers that are doing a good job of keeping the stagger pressure high on the enemies, then by all means continue working on your secondary win condition of stopping their natural regen from going up. And if you see a chance to Molten Bolt a striker out of position, not only to even KO them, but even just to slow them out and put them out of the game if they're on the other side of the pitch, well, that's all means to you. But Drek'ar primarily would want to make sure that his Lock and Load his Xeno Coat is ready to go, so he can follow up and maintain core control with 1-2 Lock and Load to prevent enemies from ever stealing the core back from him. Dubu! Dubu, the Enduring Defender, is a wonderful striker for beginners and veterans alike, boasting a relatively high skill ceiling that benefits from his creation use and his ability to stopgap many hard forces with proper ability timing. Usually you'll see him in the goalie position, but sometimes he can be a pretty impressive forward if he gets the right awakenings going. Most often than not, you'll see him making up for his lack of speed and momentum boots, or complementing his already big size in powerhouse pauldrons, Though sometimes you'll also even see Strike Shot depending on the map if you get a awakening that's built towards your projectiles or your creations. As a forward, you really lack core control if you don't want to use any of your abilities, so you usually see switch kits, but if you want to go for cheesier kills on brawler heavy maps, pummelers is the way to go. Generally, you'll want to either boast your immense size even bigger with awakenings like Built Different or Big Fish, speed to help out and save your somersault for whenever you really need it, or cooldown reduction, as your creation traits can be long-lasting and really cause wrenches in enemies' game plans since they can't reliably stall against you. Hot Shot's great, Perfect Form's great since you'll be striking enemies with a core almost often than not. Catalyst is pretty wonderful for asserting your place on the field, and if you are lacking in cooldowns, Team Player can help out both as a goalie and a forward, since you need to have time to wind up and get through your ability startup animations, or if you're just completely out on its own. When you get to your somersault, you'll be looking at either extension traits, so Super Surge is wonderful for dealing a little bit more damage since you're going to be stopping hard forces. Chrono Boost actually is pretty nice too, because one key thing that people forget is that Somersault has debuff as a trait, because it stuns enemies when you hit them with it. So not only do you stop the core and enemies, if you have any extensions or Chrono Boost or even Cast to Last whenever it goes with it, that means you have a lot more time to just safely clear even past the enemy's feet without fear of them second striking you back. Otherwise, Heavy Impact's wonderful, of course, since you'll be hitting probably more often than not in the goalie position an enemy and the core to stop them from hard forcing it, so you get the cooldown back from what's already a high ability, or even Prize Fighter if you want to use it offensively and just hit people. You can intercept, even though it's got a pretty slow wind up and dash, you can actually shart on the edges sometimes if you have enough power, which can make people scared of you. Now when it comes to rollout, of course, I'm going to be addressing rollout and Tofu Fortress in the same vein since they share the same tags of projectile and creation. Both of the regular traits will apply. Time Wars Creator and Monumentalist will be wonderful for asserting your field pressure. Even if you're a goalie, you can send this almost to the midfield and just forget about that lane entirely. Cast to Last is already great both for the debuff duration from Somersault, but just for the creation time from Rollout and Tofu Fortress. And Aerials goes both ways, Somersault range and range on Rollout and Tofu Fortress. Now, of course, with Tofu Fortress almost able to lock down an entire lane, making maps like Ai.Mi Zap or Night Market completely trivial from one side of the field, Extra Special is, of course, great. But if you're looking for cheesier kills, you can easily look at Specialized Training or Missile Propulsion to help you get the job done. Specialized Training makes these little tofu points hit a lot harder, meaning you can easily chip down somebody's stagger from about full to maybe even half their health if you get 2 solid hits from the way the plates fall, and this is a great option for forcing people away from corners, or even making them have to respect it, because Missile Propulsion's extra damage and extra knockback, if you're coupling it with Power Explosion's innate defense, or innate damage, or even Pummeler's innate knockback, you can easily strike on the edges, knock down a lane, and knock down an enemy striker with this. But I would advise you to take Specialized Training more if you're still learning the striker, as Missile Propulsion's extra range can sometimes leave pretty obvious gaps in your fortress if somebody's there to hit it. So you'll want to get used to how far they actually go with Missile Propulsion before you really start considering if this is the awakening for you. But overall, Dubu is just a pretty competent defender that works pretty well with most awakenings. He can very visibly flex around whichever he wants to build his kit around, either his secondary or his primary and special, and he benefits mostly from the biggest and most impactful traits in general, size and speed, of course. When it comes to Era, you are looking for ways to help support your teammates in more subtle ways more often than not, but it also boils down to a matter of speed. Eject button helps you out as a goalie if you're trying to enhance your flutterfly duration and lets you move in for a 3v2 before snapping back to your goal, or you'll just usually see the usual momentum boots, switch kits if you're going goalie forward, but she occupies a midfield role very well, and you should always strive to see her taking that position. When it comes to what her core is, Chrono Boost is great because she centers all around buffs, and once again, duration and flutterfly. Cast to Last helps out her buff durations and her magic maelstrom, and just anything in the core speed category that helps out her survival since she might be taking hits without any real defensive force opportunities away from her, or just anything to to help her just speed around without even having to worry about these. So peak performance, stat or swagger helps out. If you can greed for stats on stats if you don't feel as pressured, and just anything to help you out in that regard. Fortify, although we already mentioned Chrono Boost, Aerial, Super Surge, and the big threats once again. Since this is especially a team-wide dash, this helps out 3 people against 1, possibly gaining up in the core, and any extension duration will be great for you. Twin Drive's pretty nice too, especially since, well, it's just a pretty passive buff. You're just looking to either wrestle control or force enemies to react as soon as you cast this, so it's nice on that end. And to an extent as well, especially if you're finding yourself on the edge of taking too much offense, Fight or Flight can help you out, along with showing up your own speed if you took Magnetize instead of Switch Kits. Now when it comes to Bewitching Beam, quantity. You are always using this in any way, especially since it is a softer force. Prime Time Rapid Fire, if you get an extension trait, Bewitching Beam lets you just no-sell some strikers like X, and just say, yeah, you want a Bowrunner near me? I shrink you. That Bowrunner is smaller. Yeah, Rasmus, you want a Pendulum Swing me? Well, I shrink you. That radius is smaller, and you just walk away from them. You have to remember, Bewitching Beam debuffs enemy size and speed, buffs your own size and speed, buffs your own size, and buffs your teammate's size. If you are, anytime you cast it, you always get the buff yourself, and as such, if you really feel like you're lacking on speed, you can just beat out some people by just taking Big Fish or taking both differently. Even if the impact is going to be the smallest and you're really not looking for kills on air besides Magic Maelstrom, fact is, you can just outmarch some people sometimes by size. Or if you get Best of Both Worlds, you'll just run past them and outmarch them by size. Now when it comes to your special, of course the big creation traits will be there, but you are looking for ways to either extend the range, like with aerials or missile propulsion, or extend how much of the field it covers. You always have to put yourself in either weird positions if you want to find the best setup sometimes, to either send it straight along the corner and force people away, or find those weird cheesy kills. But fact is, this is a very, very setup reliant ability, and also relies very much so on Monumentalist over time was greater in my opinion. The size difference is night and day with being able to control a side of the pitch and locking people out of a possible lane. But remember, enemies don't see where you are sending the Magic Maelstrom, they just see that that you are creating it. And as such, you can easily scare off some people from even attempting to pass in certain lanes or even approaching you if you're dribbling the core while you're waiting for the Magic Maelstrom to fully form. The main thing you are looking for, especially if you are playing the goalie position, is that you are looking to clear it away from corners. Yes, you might not find a good angle to where you could possibly push somebody off the arena, but fact is, you are threatening people with saying, if you try to dribble and hold it in this weird corner of Taiko Temple or this weird corner of Demon Dice, you are going to be punished by the Magic Maelstrom, and I have all authority to walk up and just reclaim core control all to myself. This is made to force mistakes out of enemies in positioning. Sometimes you can get a good evade out of them, but either way, positioning mistake means you get the core, and evade means they're not striking. And if they strike, well, they lose their intangible properties and they could get hit. You get the core again. It's all about finding ways to not only capitalize on your speed, but capitalize on enemy mispositioning. Because once they are on one side of the pitch, and you have core control, you just dash over to the other side, and now it's just a free 1v1, 2v1 to the goalie if you're with your other striker. You are all looking to capitalize on this, and make sure that the enemies literally have no way to catch up to the play, thanks to them being shrunk by Bewitching Beam, and you being faster thanks to Flutterfly. Estelle, the Stunning Sniper, is one of the most versatile strikers on the pitch, able to put herself comfortably in the goalie, midfield, or forward position, thanks to her boasting some of the biggest range in her abilities. She has good versatility in covering horizontal and vertical options for hard force and piercing shot, or soft force and physical force. But the primary thing that you need to be bowling around is Rose Warp. Goalies will usually see themselves taking a jet button as Estelle to extend the range of Rose Warp and help out with her vertical options, but Strike Shot isn't too uncommon of a pick if they feel like they need the extra projectile range on Rose Warp or Crystal Thorns to keep the core just away from their side of the pitch entirely. When it comes down to playing as a forward, more often than not you'll see them taking Magnetized Souls. That way they can cover their vertical range a lot easier without having to burn Rose Warp preemptively. But Switch Kits is pretty alright in case you need the extra dribbling pressure to help stall out for whenever your piercing shot is just a second or two off cooldown, for instance. The main things that you'll be building generally, if you're not looking at a specific ability for Estelle, is cooldown traits. Perfect Form, Hot Shot, Reverb for Survival are all, of course, great, since you are toning down some of your biggest weaknesses of Estelle. Of once you commit your Rose Warp or your shots, you immediately are at just a very, very weak standpoint compared to other strikers who might boast a little bit more passive range or a little bit more pressure, just instant buffs. So everything that you do is immediate, instantaneous, and as such, you need to work off those cooldowns. If you can save Rose Warp for movement, you want to at all times, and as such, speed awakenings are pretty good as well. Stats on stats is a pretty good priority, since you can just, since you have an instantaneous point that can get you away from bullies like S.O.S or Zentaro without too much fear. You can use it defensively, get away in a second stillness, and avoid all that stagger damage entirely, helping you maintain your stats, and most crucially, find yourself in a good position to hard or soft force. When it comes to Rose Warp, you want to extend the range by any means necessary, since you can catch so many people off guard with a near-miss save on the goal if you're playing in the back, or catching them when they're trying to dribble to their teammate by cutting out the passing lane with a quick teleport. Aerials will of course help you with the projectile range for both Rose Warp itself and Crystal Thorns, but it's not a bad idea to take Chrono Boost or Super Surge both as denials from players who might need it more on the enemy team, and for your own range. When it comes to Fight or Flight is also pretty nice if you're running Magnetized Souls, and that will get you that little extra speed boost and helps you have basically a budget switch kits if you need to wait that 1 or 2 seconds in dribbling for Piercing Shot to come off cooldown, and Twin Drive is just nice in general considering how long Rose Warp's cooldown is. Egoist may seem like a weird pit to have as a best in slot, but considering how Estelle is one of the few strikers who has a guaranteed insta-burst, insta-core flip into Rose Warp, so you can immediately stun everybody near the core and then send it immediately at a weird angle at the goal, means that any energy awakenings are actually in prime production for Estelle mains to pick up. And Egoist only allows you to fuel these plays a lot better, plus shores up one of her bigger weaknesses of not having any enhanced speed once Rose Warp's off cooldown. 1-2 Punch can also help out a little bit in case you sometimes hit a Piercing Shot on somebody and you can see a little bit more extra stagger damage you can put out, or even just strike and then immediately blink for that extra speed if you feel like you can out-mind game the goalie, for instance. Same thing applies to Piercing Shot, just strike Piercing Shot, strike Crystal Thorns, that extra speed can help you out sometimes. And when it comes to, since it is a hard force, you don't need to worry too much about how hard the ability is hitting. Prime Time's fine on it, Rapid Fire is of course great, and since it's a hard force, Demolitionist slots in pretty well just naturally here. Crystal Thorns is a soft force on the other hand, as such it just benefits better from having longer uptime with extra special, extra range, so that way you completely cover the entire vertical part of the pitch with missile propulsion. And if your team's pretty aggressive, the fact that Crystal Thorns fans out, you can sometimes catch people a lot with this, and in earlier beta day, I say beta days, more like season 1 days before Stinger was rotated out, you actually had a pretty good chance to just wear down people's stagger if you had more offensive teammates on your side. As such, Tempo Swing could also apply to that, but that's only if they get rotated in, and situationally, if your team is predicated off of getting KOs. The main thing that you are always looking for though with Estelle is, once again, everything starts off of your Rose Warp. You are finding ways to either steal the core from enemies thanks to you having a strike into Rose Warp and to get past them, so you can either carry the core past or even stun them as you carry it to your teammates on the other side, and then finding the corners. That way people are put into a mind game of, do I clear lawn and hope Estelle doesn't use Crystal Thorns, or do I clear directly, or do I clear straight to her and hope she doesn't use Piercing Shot? If you can force these 50-50 mind games constantly in the goalie, eventually you're going to get the time that he swaps up, and then guess what? That's a goal for your team. It is all about finding the way to start your play with Rose Warp, and then just clinically finishing it off with your other parts of your kit. Athens City, hold your applause. It's the tenacious trickster, Finii. Finii is an awkward character if you look at her ability kit in a vacuum. She lacks a traditional dash in the secondary slot, making goaltending all the harder, and her primary hard force option isn't instantaneous unless you cast it forwards, making it weird sometimes if you're getting into a strike war with the goalie. But don't let that fool you, as her almost global range with most of her kit allows her to sneakily take the core away from enemies when they're not looking and pass it out either to herself or to her teammates with relative ease. If your pointer has a duel, you'll usually see momentum boots to shore up her weakness, but sometimes you can also see powerhouse pauldrons if you want to cheese with misdirection, or even strike shot if you want misdirection to really become a global ability. When your pointer at the forward though, you'll want to usually take Magnetized Souls to get in range for casting triple take and big finish, but on the cheesier side, if you think you have enough attrition with your team comp for Siphoning Wand and triple take's debuffing effect to gradually wear down the enemy stagger, or even Pumwars if you think misdirection is your win condition to just cheese kills off the edges of the arena, then that's all your prerogative. When it comes to your general awakenings though, you're looking at either ways to increase your own innate speed, get the core out to your teammates with your abilities, or just finding ways to reduce your abilities cooldown. Perfect Form is amazing since triple take and big finish are almost guaranteed to always get their cooldown if you recast the finish early. I mean, Glass Cannons are wonderful because Finii scales wonderfully with damage on all regards, along with speed. Spark of Speed is here as well, but that's just an example of just speed in general. Team Player is great because triple take and big finish can easily ricochet super fast if you recast it towards your teammates. And Finii really doesn't care too much about size necessarily, so taking Among Giants can help out your team with retaining core control once you pass it out to them. Finnii's alternate win conditions mainly revolve around her wearing down her enemies in a battle of attrition. And Finii really doesn't care about size in relation to speed, so because of that, taking Among Giants can easily help you with your win condition and support your teammates in getting the core to them. Now, remember, Finnii's biggest alternate win is powering through her enemies through attrition or freak accident kills. Knife's Edge really helps out since misdirection goes across the field and you can just hug the edge to the edge to 40% power plus 30% speed boost. Prize Fighter is really great in case you get those accident kills. Now triple take's hitting harder, now misdirection can really just solidly put a player completely out of the game until the orbs spawn. And Stats on Stats can also help you get in those weird positions since you have pretty good survivability and peel for yourself by putting big finish at your feet to slow down enemies before triple taking them if they really linger without using an evade. Now, once again, triple take is the big core of your kit, and as such, any way to refresh the duration, or refresh the cooldown of it is great. Twin Drive is great, Fight or Flight's great if you're especially leaning into that kind of brawler mindset and staggering enemies constantly. Super Surge helps out with the damage a little bit, and even not pictured is Heavy Impact, since it is considered an impact ability, and you'll probably be hitting an enemy in the core if you put it right at their feet. Otherwise, if you want to look on the other end and support your own teammates' perspective, if they're more brawl heavy, Chrono Boost and Cast Loss are great for extending the debuff duration. Alongside 1-2 Punch if people once again don't respect triple take and don't evade it. Then you're hitting harder and harder, not to mention this also bolts you up for hitting a misdirection right afterwards. Missile Propulsion and Deadeye are wonderful for taking almost half of an enemy striker's health out if they don't have any stagger traits innately. And even if it is a hard force, fact is, you are looking for just ways to really make an impact even if you're off the ball or directly on top of it. You can easily cast it forwards just for the instant hit if you have prime time, or just lay an artillery barrage from across the field without care as long as you're hitting the core or something. You're at least hitting stagger down and you're keeping people pressured out. Now, Big Finish, a lot of people try to use it as a clinical finisher ability, but the fact is, this is more of a preventive measure, because you buy time for your team the entire time the core is stuck in the middle of Big Finish. If you try to cast it while the core is on the outside of the range, it usually just takes one strike or even one ability to get it out, so the best thing that you can do is either stall for your own cooldowns, try to even get some energy if you're 1 or 2 strikes off, casting Big Finish and then just striking it in the middle so it stays there for your core flip, or when it comes to enemy core flips, if you're goaltending, you can easily put it on one side of the goal while you cover the other, because the slowdown is just enough for you to strike it and send it another way, or even just put it at the enemy striker's feet. That way the initial momentum of the core when it's getting hit from the core flip is tremendously slowed, and therefore their ability to wait out what they do with their options is completely negated. If they wait too long, then the core itself will just be sucked into the gravity well and they lose all speed, or they have to send it early as soon as they see Big Finish being put down. This is a way to shut down enemies' passing lanes options if you cast it when the core is heading towards the midfield, to shut down their key offense and even hard forces if you cast it alongside a Juliette or an Estelle trying to get it out of the way, or even you can just put it on the enemy's feet if they're way out of position. That way they either have to evade or be slowed pretty much forever, to where you can even lay the entire kit inside of them, triple take right afterwards, and then misdirection to finish them off if they're really low on stagger. Of course, your creation traits are going to be the key thing here. Monumentalist and Timeless Creator are both wonderful in their own retrospects, as people usually don't time how long Big Finish will be on its own, meaning you can easily throw people's mental math off if you have Timeless Creator, or even Cast Loss to help out. And of course, Extra Special will just be great for annoying the crap out of everybody, like just poison this every single chance that you get. Remember, Big Finish is, contrary to its name, it's not only your critical finisher. It is a great option for slowing down the core, or even placing it right behind your forward if you're playing midfield. That way, if the core gets sent away from them, you can just literally boomerang it right back to them. Now, I will, of course, mention the cheesy options when it comes to, if you have the corner control, you can easily put Big Finish in there, and just have it, and put a kind of slight edge into where the goal mouth is. That way you can easily sneak a few barriers, so immediately what comes to my mind is Gates of Obscura, Taito Temple, or what people used to ban Finii for, Demon Dice. By putting half of the Big Finish field inside the goal barrier, because it's in the middle of the map, if people don't find a way to knock it out, you easily earn both hits and have enough duration to knock it into the goal, if they don't catch you looking. Finii is a wonderfully weird striker that meshes a lot of core components that all play to core control and supporting your teammates in pushing either agenda, either keeping the enemy away by deterring them with almost global abilities, or just deterring them by way of KO, and huge ability for your team to follow up with you. Make sure you're coordinating with your team if you're in a pre-made to follow up on your triple takes, or just intrinsically just emote to them and say go for KOs if you debuff somebody who's pretty low. That way you can make use of your 1-2 punch procs, or just find easier ways to control the core, either by denying enemy goal scoring opportunities and helping out your midfield game by making sure it never crosses back to your side and to where you are at your weakest. Don't let Juliette's moniker of the eager rookie fool you. She is easily one of the most impressive strikers on the pitch when she gets her game plan going. You'll see her 99% of the time at the forward position, either using switch kits as a way to control the core and wait out the cooldowns for her dash punch to be up for hard forcing, or striking on the edges with pummelers, especially dependent on map. Ai.Mi Zap helps naturally to the game plan for the middle being your entire playground thanks to the middle hole, helping you out to finding those cheesy angles, and sometimes even Atlas's Lab helps you out with vicious van braces, as you can either start on the edges with pummelers or knock people with dash punch into the middle blast zone area before detonating it yourself for a heaping amount of stagger damage that you can easily come back to thanks to your lifesteal. You do also sometimes see goalie Juliettes. I've seen a few and actually won with a few every now and then, but it feels more like a throw pit, but if it works for you, it can work. Momentum boots obviously because you need the extra speed, but on brawler heavy maps like Demon Dice, the extra size and damage from pauldrons can actually help you out with fighting hard forces with hard forces. You'll be looking for your general awakenings to be centered around size and speed. Size lets you easily find better dash punch conversions, speed lets you control the core more and not have to use your cooldowns in trying to get the core on your side of the field, and of course, looking for anything else that augments that game plan. Egoist is great for even if you miss the dash punch and get somebody close to the edge, you can just burst and finish them off without having to use your entire energy bar. 1-2 punch helps you convert on this. Nice edge lets you be more of a pull shot at the very edge of the pitch. And just any Stagger City traits, namely peak performance, will help you out along with Big Fish on that same stacking regard to let you stay on the enemy side without having to fear eating too many abilities and being staggered away from your pressure yourself. On that same note, you're looking at Fight or Flight to help out your Switch Kits game plan, Twin Drive to, well, help you have your dash and therefore your punch off cooldown quicker, your combo, and even Super Surge can be pretty nice as you'll get the extra damage, and people don't expect Juliette to take one of the big three in Super Surge, Chrono Booster, Aerials for your dash alone, meaning you can easily catch people a lot off guard with your extended range into converting for a punch KO on the edge of the field. Glass Cannon helps out really well into this, since the extra damage that you'll be getting from Flying Phoenix into Fiery Fist is a good little over half of a stagger bar with just a little bit of power, and the natural speed helps you find that right angle for where you do want to hit people into the edge of the map. When it comes to Fiery Fist, you remember, you have a 7-second cooldown, so you should be using the liberally off cooldown as much as you can. Heavy Impact not only boosts the damage, but can also hit the core and the enemy, leading to you getting that reduced cooldown on it. Prize Fighter it's self-explanatory, Adrenaline Rush is self-explanatory. You are getting Dash Punch kills, you can easily stat that 20 into a 60, so now you're at 160 power and you're just hitting people over and over again. But if you're looking for more core control with Switch Kits once again, Demolitionist and Quick Strike are great for dash punching to stun the goalie and getting the goal barriers. Now you have Dash Punch again to just snowball the advantage while they're panicking and may not even have their own cooldowns back up to deal with you. On that note, Flame Fury, extra special, can be nice for core control, but you don't see it too much because people might evade out of it. But the times you do catch people with no energy due to them naturally evading or using core flip, specialized training hits really hard, but the key thing that you actually want to look for instead is perfect form. Because if people don't evade, you have to remember that Flame Fury is a series of small light hits before a heavy roundhouse kick. If somebody doesn't evade, you are basically getting your entire Flame Fist cooldown pretty much refunded and about half of your dash refunded by itself. Then you just punch somebody and then there you go. You already have dash punch already coming out. You're dash punching people naturally. You're already doing funding your special cooldown, and it just feeds itself in a perpetual cycle. You just want to be finding perfect, if you can, find perfect form at every opportunity, as it greatly expands your options, and you want to use your abilities more liberally instead of only saving them for combos and having to worry yourself if you burn them just to retain core control. Juliette may seem pretty simple on paper, but fact is, she needs to set herself up for success a lot and bully her opponents away from her if it comes to. If she's left open, she can just stall for time, with dribbling, even without sword kits, and just, she has an easy conversion with 2 hard forces. Flying Phoenix stuns, Fiery Fist stuns, Flame Fury can stall for a little bit more and force people's evades out before you dash punch. It all combos into itself. So anything that either enhances your ability to extend the combo or have it more off cooldown is exactly what you're looking for when you're playing Juliette. Your Blobos will blot out the sun and the Torch Strike fields. The curious explorer Juno relies on her Blobo friends and creations to make the most out of her ability kit, and relies on ways to either reset the amount of times she can use them, extend the duration of them, or amp up the power so that she can easily take weird open goal angles with the auto aim or her own aim. As a goalkeeper, you usually see Juno taking a jet button to extend the range of blob bounce and make it so that she can safely traverse from one side of the field to another, both defending the goal with the leftover blob from her jumping point and support her teammates since she can't be hit on her jump over to make a 3v2 situation. Otherwise, you might see Strike Shot to help out when one point is off cooldown and make Trend Point go more than half of the distance of the field. When you're pointing her forwards though, Sword Kits is almost essential since anytime it hits a Blobo, you can cast Strike yourself and get that on speed boost, but Magnetized Souls is also pretty nice in general as well. Like I said before, any creation traits are going to be great on her, so Timeless Creator, Monumentalist, even Cast to Last to an extent. Hotshot also is one of her primary traits to take, as every single Blobo hit is only going to make the core all the faster, especially if you get a combo from Make It Rain, and that feeds into 1-2 punch as well, as hitting the Blobos, even if they might hold it for a second, that will ramp up the speed. Perfect Form's also pretty nice as well in case you're hitting enemies or they're running into your blobs to try to deny them, so they take the starter hit and you're getting the CDR increase. Not to mention team player being nice from the goalie perspective, because sometimes the auto aim might take it to an enemy striker, so you might want to strike your friends yourself and send it to one of your teammates, amping up the speed even more. I'm including Spark of Strength here just as an example of, remember, your strike hits also scale off of your strength, and as such, things like Prize Fighter, Spark of Strength, or just anything to amp up your damage in that sense isn't just good for poking people with Friend Point, but also for making it even faster, especially if you have one of those core traits of like Hotshot already. Now, when you get into Blob Bounce, Frost Cannon's great because you can easily speed a little bit more up, have a little bit more setup time for when you find the right angle to jump, because it's predicated off of where you are currently moving. Aerials is good for helping out your friend flying space and also Make It Rain as well, and of course anything to help you out in getting set up. Among Giants is pretty nice because Juno relies more on setting up passing angles to her blobs and her teammates more than size. Egoist is pretty good too since you have a pretty devious core flip right into blob bounce if you're unsure on where you want to send it and you want your blob to do the work for you, or if you have 1-2 punch and you want to combo off of that. And well, twin drive is just great for goalies in general who run a jet button. Pinpoint, of course, since you're not really relying on KOs, you don't mind Prime Time taking away 10% of its power. Missile Propulsion is great on the opposite side of the spectrum and can even start with kills on the side with its increased knockback thanks to the 20% from Missile Propulsion. And Demolition is just also feeds itself well in case you're going against a goalie with no more abilities, since you have the hit, the initial hit from Pinpoint, and then the Blobbo left over to rebound wherever you need it to go. Now, Make It Rain is just going to be a nuisance of an ability that enemies have to constantly deal with. And like I said before, Missile Propulsion works well, Deadeye is great for chaining those hits, and crucially, because you can use Strike with friends to manually take control of where your Blobos are going, Quick Strike is pretty darn good for Juno. Not only are you getting extra energy with every single strike, but sometimes you can throw enemies off, because instead of having your Blobos chained to one another like it naturally does in Make It Rain, you can send it to a weird passing angle to your teammate, doubly so if you have team player for instance, and really throw people off their game. Just because they might be covering one angle, but might not expect it either from the auto aim or from you taking manual control of your Blobos. You are trying to find ways to narrow that gap on when decision making on when you want to take control and when you want your Blobos to do the work. And Quick Strike's both great, as even though if you take manual control it represses your strike cooldown, sometimes you may just miss and might be a little too anxious striking early or striking late before the core reaches your Blobo, and this can help shore up your problems if you're still learning this character. Juno is a very safe bet for when you want to be able to just get core pressure both before and past any forwards trying to get in your face. You have an invulnerable secondary, which means you can insert a lot of pressure, and any blows that come your way, you just hop right past and take core control right afterwards. Kai is a natural superstar for a reason, with all of his abilities having clear, concise game plans that easily translate over to the awakenings you are looking to draft. He functions well in every single role in the pitch, midfield, forward, forcer, or goalie. More often than not, you will see Kai's running either momentum boots to just boost his naturally gifted speed, a jet button to extend the duration and help out his teammates with his forces with barrage, or even strike shots sometimes, if he really feels like he could cheese a little bit more with Giga Blast or needs the extra barrage range. Whenever you come out for a forward though, more often than not you just see switch kits, magnetized sometimes, but it's just switch kits 99% of the time because you need to take the core and run with it from one side or the other. Everything predicates off of Blazing Pace's cooldown. Barrage doesn't go completely across the map. Giga Blast can only help you out so much when it's not when it's off on cooldown. That's not you're looking at anything to just blaze past the enemies and win your march with pure speed. Fight or Flight is great because it enhances your switch kits. Peak Performance helps you out with your defensive liability since you have only Giga Blast to slightly knock enemies away. Quick Strike helps you generate enemy to play towards enemy energy exodia if you're running Fire Up, or if you're running Egoist to help you out and just control the core, and just anything to either help you out with speed, survival, or both at the same time. So Stature Swagger is really nice for this end. You're already going to be hitting everybody with almost all 5 hits of barrage more often than not unless you're using it defensively, so stats on stats is good if you can survive. On Giants, you don't care about size as much as you do as speed. It's like, you are just speed. Lightning McQueen, I am speed. When it comes to Blazing Pace, I only have 2 of them pictured here, but quite frankly, you should be trying to look at all 3 of the big 3 extension traits at all time: Chrono Boost, Aerials, Super Surge. Chrono Boost of course gets the most because it's a buff, Aerials helps out your 2 projectile other abilities, and well, Super Surge, you're just doing it for the duration increase. That's really what it comes out to being. Secondary Drive can help out with catching people off guard, and more often than not, you just see it as a goalie because they want to either cover a little bit more, or want to be able to help out their teammates in forcing if they have a jet button. And of course, Cast the Last joins the big 3 as well, just because it's a buff, you're looking at the buff duration part, not the creations. When it comes to for Kai goalie as well, especially, if Orb Exodia is in the game, it's pretty nice to see as well, since he can just Blazing Pace to one side, pick it up if you have the Orb of Wandering, and just run back to your side of the goal, or even force closer with Barrage, because you are all predicating everything on speeding up with Poison Pace, running with the core, and then as soon as you get the 1v1 with the goalie, they can't win, because you strike, barrage, they can't cover anything at all, it's all over from there. Rapid Fire, Prime Time, you don't care about how hard your barrage hits are doing to the enemy, you're just caring about quantity of making it past the roll barriers and just forcing them as calm as possible. If you have Quick Strike, for instance, Double Arsonist could be wonderful with helping out with just Strike, Barrage, get the barrier, now Barrage again if you can retain control, but it can come down to how well you're feasting or famining. But Giga Blast will help you out in these weird situations if you're losing control more often than not. Both of the usual suspects in extra special and specialized training are great, since you're already going to be getting nice cheesy corner or angle or corner kills, or corner wrestles or side of the arena kills, and specialized training only exaggerates the fact. Mr. Propulsion helps out in that end and it lets your barrage reach out a little bit more, so in case the core gets cleared to the opposite corner of the map, that helps you out. Deadeye, of course, for extra cheese pressure and also for extra speed. And sometimes if you're pretty confident with where your Giga Blast is, or if you're in a particularly crowded map like Taiko Temple or Demon Dice, you can easily go Hot Shot or even Heavy Impact if you're looking for the extra speed and cooldown reduction. You are keeping yourself to a pretty simple game plan as Kai, and as such, it just all predicates down to, once again, do you have speed? Do you have extensions on blazing pace? You can make the plays, or you have to fear the plays of Kai. Because, kind of like Juliette, once Kai sets himself up for success and has full core control, there really isn't much you can do more unless you are a creation character. You're kind of going to get beat out in many situations with a full strike and 4 hits of the barrage. It just comes down to really stopping him from getting to that point or ever getting control of the core. Let's talk about the king of attrition brawling, even though he got nerfed, Kazan the Frenzied Enforcer. As you can see here, all of his abilities in either umbrella form are impacts, and so because of that, you are always looking for ways to keep the damage constantly going and flowing, and making them hit as hard as possible. When playing Kazan as a goalie, it's the same mindset as Rasmus, to where you are looking at powerhouse cauldrons to take advantage of your size, because you get extra benefits for critted reverence and carry it away, critted reverence and top spin, stealing off of your size. Damage reduction is kind of nice, of course, but also 20 extra power will let you bully enemies out of your goal mouth if it comes to. Otherwise, momentum boots is just, always decent enough, considering he has to really commit with his dashes if he goes in on it. When you're playing him as a forward, of course, it comes out to just the core 3, even though I only have 2 pictured. Siphoning Wand is de facto go-to. You stop anybody trying to scale with the stagger, and you just continue to do little bits of chip damage with all of your abilities. Vicious Vambrace, in case you don't get brawlers back to yourself, you could easily use that extra support. And if you really have good kill condition opening awakenings, Pummers, of course, works pretty nice. Not as nice because Quick Reverence is now a white hit instead of a regular hit, but it's still pretty nice. Now, when it comes to, because you can just combo all of your abilities into each other. Quick Reverence, the Swip it, the Pop, Retract, now you're in open form. You Top Spin, carry it away, maddening the set. 4 abilities all in a row. 1-2 Punch is amazing on Kazan. Heavy Impact is amazing on Kazan. Perfect Form is amazing on Kazan, because you are looking to just keep your pressure ever flowing at every single opportunity. Built Different is great on Kazan, and even though it's not pictured, Big Fish is great at Kazan, because more size, more critted reverence hits, more top spin hits, bigger pop retract too as well, and it puts Spark strength here because, well, it's power. You have 4 abilities at your disposal, as opposed to most strikers 3. Damaging wise, I mean. You can easily make your quantity as good as your quality. Your quality as good as your quantity when it comes to power here. If it ever comes back, Adrenaline Rush, getting your means all of your cooldowns are going to be lowered, and, well, of course, getting kills will lower all of them, will half all your cooldowns. Prize Fighter, of course, is great for win conditioning, and if it ever also comes out slow, Stinger would be busted on Kazan, let's face it, everybody. Now, when it comes to your secondary, the Swip and Carry It Away, Glass Cannon's great, it's speed and power. Egoist is great because, with the Swip and Carry It Away's, properties, you're not going to be able to use them as well as other dashes or other blinks. So having any extra speed from Glass Cannon, or just really just getting to run to where you need to be from Egoist, considering you're going to be dealing so much damage, generating so much energy from hitting people, are great. But Fight or Flight is bar none. amazing on Kazan. You're going to be staggering people so often that having ways to get around the map is great. Granted, it doesn't refresh your ultimate cooldown, of course, but the fact is, you can just keep dashing in and out, and it gets you, and it lets you open up your pressure from players to the core. You can dash with the Swift, hit the core with Push the Point, your closed umbrella strike. Then, as soon as you stagger somebody, now you have it back, so you can surprise them with an immediate Swift to pop retract. When it comes to your primaries, same deal here. Any CDR would be great. Prime time, rapid fire, just more and more hits. Tempo swing is great, because that's a little bit more light siphoning wand, damage on the end. If you really feel like you have that, the pressure and the core pressure more than kill pressure, Demolitionist is great, because that's all of your cooldowns. All 4 cooldowns going down. And then when it comes to, for your ultimates as well, you have to remember, both are amazing for Kazan. Having, with swapping between your forms, and stance dancing, and just weaving in and out of your abilities is so important. Specialized training makes Maddening Descent hit like a truck. Extra special means, well, like I said, it's just quantity or quality, or both. Either or works for Kazan. You're just looking to just keep hitting people as much as you possibly can. Now granted, some cases you'll have enemies taking vicious van braces against you, or just having things like status factor making it very much so harder for you to concede pressure, but you still have very, very weird and wild ways to take core pressure away, core control away from them, like the Swift into toward the leverage pull, then press the point sweet spot, gets a purple core hit. Maddening Descent controls pretty well, kind of like Finnie's triple take, in a circular radius, so you will have to, let's say, even if you aren't getting kills or getting enough stagger pressure due to people having too high stagger or ways to circumvent it, you still look to command respect as Kazan, just with how much pressure you are constantly exerting on whoever it is. Even if they may not be dying, you can still force out of aids, you can still force out bad positioning. You are forcing them to play your game and forcing them to have to abide by your rules when you are playing as Kazan. Make them have to deal with you, and you will never have a bad game as Kazan, because they have to draft around you. You are pretty vivid in how you can go with a lot of these awakenings. So the fact is, even without cooldown reduction, for instance, Kazan can just lay 5 abilities into you. Crooked Overheads, Top Spin, Pop Retreat, Maddening Descent, and then a burst. After all of that, you have so much potential to 100 to death somebody at any time if there's no healing around, and as such, you mold the entire field based on how many hits you can get and what ways you can capitalize on those hits, be it generating energy for egoists to make plays or to guarantee more kills, or, like I said, quantity or quality. Your pick. It's the Chaotic Rocketeer, Luna! Luna herself is a very high skill cap character that a lot of people struggle with even at the high ranks, due to her ability to almost effortlessly follow up every time with her whammy boost combo, and have tremendous impact on the entire metagame flow state of the game thanks to Crater basically curtailing the entire enemy's energy gain. Whenever you see her as a goalie, you will always, 99% of the time, see her taking the jet button to make sure that she can always make use of one of the best boosts in the game, in Boost, and, well, support her teammates in a 3v2 no matter what, with insane speed and a little bit of damage to help out her more offensive strikers. If you see her taking momentum boots or anything else, I'll be honest, that might have just been they were AFK during gear selection. I'm not saying it's impossible to see, and sometimes you see it on maps like Oni Village, where due to the natural speed gates, you might Lunas might not be as confident to commit with a jet button and want to cover both goal mouse at the same time, but it's not really that common. Whenever you do see her playing forward, though, more often than not, you'll see her playing Magnetized Souls in case she's already out of her, because her boost can really make up for her lack of dribbling, and she can easily just strike on there. But you will also see Pummelers pretty well taken on maps with weird edges that people have to play around, so like some of the Clarion test chamber configurations, or just brawler heavy maps, since Whammy can easily kill about at the same range as Juliette if it's not that from where the midfield orb spawn if people aren't careful thanks to Pummelers, and one trait that helps on projectiles, like missile propulsion for instance. Now, in general, you'll be looking at anything that either buffs up her speed, since her size is really one big pain point, or just ways to keep your momentum and pressure on the entire side of the pitch. Deadeye is great in general since that helps trigger on Whammy and Crater, and even if you're using it close, you can easily boost away just to make sure that you get the full effect out of it. Glass Cannon is great since with how small you are and how far your dash goes, you can easily let it stack up passively before letting your Crater go off for the extra damage. Spark of Speed I just have it just to demonstrate the speed benefit, and Demolitionist is also pretty nice, since especially if you have any traits that help out your ultimate, you can easily just pop it at the start of a round and snowball your first touch advantage. Among Giants is of course wonderful for Luna since she only cares about getting from the core things to boost, and otherwise, any reset traits or stacking traits like Prize Fighter or Adrenaline Rush can really help out, especially with how often than not you will be getting kills thanks to Whammy and Crater if you're watching enemy energy combos. Now when it comes to boost, Twin Drive is without a doubt probably one of Luna's most important awakenings to have, especially as a goalie, since your pressure just becomes from saving the core every now and then to sometimes committing to you can commit anytime, anywhere, anywhere you want. Super Surge is great as well, because even though you're not really worrying about the dash range, the extra damage is pretty good for just stunting a third of enemy stagger if they don't have any traits for it. And Fighter Fight is wonderful too, for showing up your forward game if you're taking Magnetized Souls or Pummelers, and also for you're going to be staggering people out with Whammy or Crater pretty often. And if they're not ready for it, if they're still even in hit stun as well, you can just hit them with boost and end their lives. Aerials is here too, just mainly for helping out with Whammy's extra range. But if you really want to find any other follow-ups as well, you might take Big Fish if you actually want to worry a little bit about size, as this can help you out a little bit in getting more consistent boost hits, even though the only impact that it's helping is your Crater. But 1-2 Punch is a more reliable alternate win condition, as if you hit somebody with Whammy, point blank boost into them, or Crater into point blank boost, anything like that is actually deceptively powerful. Now of course, it's just constant missiles, since this is an across the pitch ability. Prime Time, Rapid Fire, and of course Missile Propulsion are all great. Missile Propulsion having the extra power and knockback, meaning you can easily send it from at the top of the field to the bottom or vice versa, and get sneaky KOs if people aren't paying attention, especially if you're bringing Pummelers to the match. Now Crater is the bread and butter of what makes Luna the most impressive spot on the field when it comes to ultimates. Extra special, specialized training, hot shot even, help out with your cooldowns and hits, and the main thing that you always need to be worried about with it is watching the enemy energy gain. Sometimes, especially if you have extra special, you are not looking to hit them, but just get their evades out, because once an enemy has no more evade, that's a pretty clear go signal if you have offensive strikers like S.O.S, Zentaro, or just anybody else super brawly that want to just go in and go to town on somebody. The biggest ways you want to be using this ability is either, of course, for zoning, either from your own goal mouth at the midfield to keep the core on the enemy's side of the pitch, or crucially, to force enemies to respect you. If they have burst, you use it so they either have to use the core flip on nothing and preserve their life, or take the entire hit, which is an especially hard decision if they want to get greedy and have any burst with when you have specialized training. This also goes the opposite way of preventing them from ever getting burst. So let's say there's an enemy who has Egoist. You might just want to put Crater on their face to force them to have to use an evade early and waste time and energy to avoid those hits. And of course, if you catch them with no energy, thanks to boost, Whammy, getting the evades out early, or your own teammates, well, Crater right in the middle of them. What can they do? You can shark real easily with knife sets, especially as a goalie, just for that extra 40% power. Any orb pondering traits will help you out, the orb traits will help you retain your own energy for possible combos and even hits. And heavy impact if you hit the core in somebody else, if they're out of energy anyway. Now I will bring attention to one alternate win condition as well that I don't have as a trait necessarily. Egoist can sometimes work for Luna with boost, considering she also has another option when it comes to insta core flipping, because you can hit boost, core flip, and then you have the tail end of your boost slash your own strike right afterwards to just immediately send the core forwards while stunning anybody near it. But this can take some practice and getting used to getting the timing on. So you might want to hop into the practice tool to learn this, because otherwise, if you mess it up, you might boost past your core flip, waste your secondary, and now it's just kind of stuck there for the next second. Either way, Luna is all about curtailing enemy energy gain and making sure that whenever she starts laying on the pressure, she follows up with it, either through her teammates or through her own means by just getting in the fight with boost itself. Yes, that is the metal pipe falling sound effect in her disappointed emote. Look at that, I'm not even kidding. Welcome to Mako, the Taiko Trailblazer, and possibly last character in Omega Strikers. Mako is a great team player, able to buff her teammates and hold the core for whenever they're ready to strike at the enemy side of the field. Everything revolves around you making the best use out of drum and bass and keeping core control, both as a goalie and a very suitable midfield position. But she can play forwards if you get the right awakenings. Usually at the goalie position, you'll see her taking a jet button, not for the snapback actually, but to extend drum and bass's duration if you already don't have an extension trait. Otherwise, you'll see strike shot to extend perfect pitch's range along with ensnare drum's possible capture. And on dependent map like Demon Dice if you're more brawler heavy, you might also see Powerhouse Pauldrons as a very alternate win condition to make use of your empowered strike. At the forward though, you'll usually see yourself taking Magnetized Souls since you won't be getting your switch hits prots if you're holding drum and bass, so you want to have that extra speed, or Siphoning Wand, because you have 4 different ways to keep hitting people. Drum and bass's recast, perfect pitches cast, ensnare drum's hitting plus the walls, and your empowered strike of course. Generally though, Mako will benefit from size awakenings of course, so both different and big fish, to make drum and bass hit even harder, to make perfect pitches cone radius if you don't charge it up even bigger. Cast loss is wonderful as drum and bass qualifies as a buff, so it extends that, and it extends ensnare drum's own duration, so somebody either has to evade to dodge the initial projectile, or be stuck in jail for a good amount of the match. Anything to help out her innate speed or even empowered strike will be great as well, so Glass Cannon to help out, because if somebody doesn't hit her out of drum and bass, she's getting extra speed and even can hit harder once you recast it, and Quick Strike, even then, just to get your empowered strike at 8 hits all that faster. Anything else to help out our teammates are great too, because with the recast you can easily trigger team player, stats and stats help you out since you have natural peel thanks to your ability kit, and any of the orb traits, but I put Ponder here just for the sole example of getting your cooldowns back. Now drum and bass, you will once again look for Twin Drive just because it's just a great trait in general and you're not really caring about the cooldown since you're more caring about the uptime with how long you're looking at it. Chrono Boost is of course the most important as it qualifies as a buff, but Aerials is still nice since it helps out your other 2 abilities, and if you're really looking for more attrition growing, Super Surge, you still do get the secondary effect of hitting both the core and somebody else for a little harder otherwise. But you also can look at Heavy Impact if you're really getting in front of other people's faces to work for your cooldown reduction. Not as much for the power because it's a light hit, but for the cooldown if you get 2 or more people with it. Now Perfect Pitch, being a good stun if you charge it up as well, benefits from Prime Time and Rapid Fire, but also Missile Propulsion sneakily, as you can treat it almost kind of like a Luna missile if you can get somebody on the edge and catch them off guard. The projectile isn't that fast, but if people see you charging, they won't always immediately know where you're trying to send your projectile to, which can catch them off guard. Now, Ensnare Drums is a weird awakening that, even though it's coded as a creation, you might not always want creation traits, as you really don't care about the size, unless you're trying to lock down the core. Extra Special and Specialized Training are of course going to be your main bread and butter with it. Extra Special helps you lock down enemies by themselves if they're on their own side of the play, making easy 3v2s, or the core at the midfield or even the goalie position if your forwards are out of the way and you need to buy time for them. You can easily just put this out here while you're waiting about 1 or 2 seconds for drum and bass to come off cooldown before stalling the core with it. Otherwise, Specialized Training is made exclusively for following up with people, as the initial projectile won't hit that hard, but you want to be able to find a way to follow up or have your teammates follow up to bounce people into the corners. Because once they hit one of the corners, they go in to hit all 3 of them, and then it's just Cowabunga Sayonara for them. Monumentalist might seem good for the extra damage on hit that you'll be getting on it, but since it makes the creation range bigger, you might not lock down as much of the field as you'd like. If you had to take your creation traits as a denial, Timeless Trader might be better since you're looking at the duration of Ensnare Drums, because you are visibly trading terrain that people either have to respect or waste their stature on in getting rid of. It is wonderful as well for even hitting just the core by itself at the midfield for once again if you need to stall for time and wait for your other abilities to cool down or your teammates to respawn if they're currently KO'd. People have to respect Ensnare Drums as it can do deceptively a good amount of damage if they keep running into them just trying to get rid of the zone. Primarily, Mako is just looking to keep the core in front of her and allow her teammates to do the dirty work, especially when you have drum and bass. Because you are stalling with drum and bass and keeping the buff duration up to build up your passive secondary strike, alongside letting your teammates speed right on in, you need to make sure that you have ways to retain control of the core and get it past enemies before starting your game plan. If the core's behind you, you're pretty powerless, all things considered, so make sure you have ways to either support your teammates and start their game plans, or if everything's pretty fine and dandy and you can start building self-restraint towards your own, make sure that you can make plays either with sneaky alternate win conditions like missile propulsion or extension so that nobody can ever get past you like Chrono Boost. Attention all Clarion Core employees, the Director of Special Products has entered the pitch. Now is all about proactive plays and cutting off angles, and as such, she needs to be able to either get in front of the enemies to set up her combos, or deny enemies clear passing lanes by way of her awakenings or supporting her teammates. She is very good at shutting down enemy win conditions and shutting down hard force opportunities with proactive play. Usually when you see her being played as a goalie, you'll more often than not see Strike Shot, just due to Sentry Drone getting a lot farther and being a third striker in the pitch without having to sacrifice herself, or Momentum Boots, just as this, the standard goalie thing. But considering she has Proximity Drone to help support her with basically Proximity Drone AoE plus her strike, you more often than not see Strike Shots just to keep her influence on a wider pitch, on a wider part of the pitch, without having to sacrifice Sentry Drone to hit a incoming core. The creation traits will always apply here, but the main thing I want to bring here is her cheesy plays. Magnetized Souls you will see more often than not, just because she can easily help cover in the entire pitch top to bottom with her Proximity Drone, but you see Pummelers every now and then now is angling downwards with her Sentry Drone and letting it grow with Monumentalist. If an enemy walks into it for any reason, and trust me, this can and will happen, some people just misjudge the hitbox range, the Pummelers it can easily KO somebody off the edge even though they clearly see it growing. And, well, it is very, very good at deterring blink plays. Estelle trying to blink forwards, Zentaro trying to gas forward with the core. These Sentry Drones with Pummelers can easily shut down these specific strikers and more if you threaten them as a forward, but it comes down to how you want to play now, as more core control or looking for those weird burst opportunities if you catch people off guard trying to go for clever and clean angles. Hotshot, of course, applies pretty well, even though it only goes to your primary and secondary, just because you'll be hitting them with the AoE, or your Sentry Drone more often than not. It definitely will linger, but the times that you do get it back up there, any uptime will be great. Now, weirdly enough, I do see nows, both goalie and forwards, sharking on the edges with Knife's Edge. Mostly because, on one end, if they see somebody approaching, they can easily lifeline out and just not have to worry about it if they really fear it. On another end, they have Proximity Drone to just run away with, plus their extra speed from Knife's Edge. And if it really comes to, they can also just safely shark against melee strikers like S.O.S or Kazan if they just put a Sentry Drone on the edge and just walk in that range. It's a very weird thing that I've seen only nows do, but it's very interesting, and I have seen it work with great effect, considering she can easily transition from the edge with a 30% speed boost, use Proximity Drone to get another speed boost, and just cover wherever she needs to go. Perfect form can sometimes work, but it comes down to how well your allies help you out with your Proximity Drones, but otherwise, your standard CDR traits, because you are a creation character, will apply. When it comes to Proxy Drone, of course you'll be looking at Chrono Boost just because it's an impact, because it is a buff, and it's a buff, and you get all parts of it, first and second part, with your speed. Twin Drive's great because since Proximity Drone will last for quite a while if nobody steps on it, allied or enemy, you can easily just stall with it, and Fight or Flight can help you out as a forward in case you need that extra little Switch Kit's movement speed, or helping your teammates stay alive since you can easily just, somebody just got staggered, allied or enemy, you just put a drone on them. That's already like half of the stagger that they need before they become unbroken, and that's pretty nice. If you want to cheese a little bit more, I have Heavy Impact here because you will be hitting the core and an enemy more often than not with Proxy Drone if you're putting it at the bottom of your feet, which really is, you're not doing it for the damage, though I guess you could, kind of like Finnie's triple take, but you're looking at it just for the CDR, because you're hitting two people. So you get CDR, Proxy Drone, and you just keep that pressure up. On the same side, when it comes to Sentry Drone, you're just looking at as many times as you can just keep laying these out. Prime time, rapid fire. Because the fact is, especially with prime time making your primary hits hit a little less, you don't care because the Sentry Drone will just grow. just more drones everywhere. They will just stay there, especially with one creation trait, and guess what? They are here to just be a problem. Now, Deadeye works, of course, especially well since the drones would go far, and Missile Propulsion, same thing here, especially if you're going the Pummelers route. Now, one thing I will mention as well is when it comes to sensory drones, you are looking for ways to cut off angles when you are playing now. Especially if you did Monumentalist, for instance, even just Monumentalist by itself. You can just already cast a sensory drone and immediately cut off one side of the pitch. Now you can immediately start looking for how far you can place your proxy drones, or times when you can blink in with Lifeline to help your teammates with the 3v2 and not just for the stagger. Of course, because you are not going to be running, a jet button as now, Extra Special lets you just be Extra Special lets you easily just be a much more oppressive, a jet button, because it's a jet button built into the ability itself. I'm including aerials here because since it is a blink, you are literally basing it off as far of a distance as you possibly can. So of course, Chrono Boost benefits from it. You are getting the extra range for Sentry Drone with Lifelink as well. And if you really are struggling with high burst damage combos like Kazan, who lays all 4 abilities plus a burst, Specialized Training can help out here. One thing I did forget to include on the graphic as well is Cast to Last, as it is a creation trait, of course, and buff trait for your proxy drones. But the main thing that you are looking for with now is creative ways on when you can recognize your angles to go in, because Lifeline should be used like a jet button, especially if you don't feel any kill pressure coming on. One sneaky thing I've seen with nows, alongside that same nice edge play, is if they have Monumentalist or have Timeless Creator, they will literally put on certain maps that have smaller goal amounts to defend, or one side that they can defend easily, is put the Sentry Drone in front of the goal like the Oni Village corners, let it grow, and then blink forwards to just support the play with a 3v2. You have a 3v2 for 3 solid seconds because your Sentry Drone is defending the goal at all times. So even if somebody gets it past you when you're blinking forwards in that startup animation, your drone covers it, and you can still just go back to it and defend just fine. Find those creative plays as now to capitalize on your drones and take advantage of how many times you can easily 2-strike enemies. Proxy Drone Strike, Sentry Drone Strike, Sentry Proxy, Proximity, Sentry Strike. Quick Strike should work too, but quite frankly, you have a lot of ways to just easily force the core through with multiple hits and your teammates supporting you with your proximity drones. And it comes down to how well you angle your drones and sometimes how well you capitalize off of those weird freak accident kills. Now, of course, Guarantor is not responsible for any liable well-being or damage to any striker's minds on the pitch, but we'll cover that in the next onboarding lesson. Octavia is one of the biggest feast or famine strikers in the game, in my opinion, needing one of the big 3 traits of Chrono Boost, Aerials, or Super Surge to really become a actual character, and then you still have to play the game and pilot her afterwards. As a goalie, you'll typically see her running a jet button to continue extending her flow state, though sometimes you do see some strike shots if people aren't as confident and want to make better use of Sonic Boom. When it comes to forward gears, of course you're going to be running Switch Kits. Magnetized, it may seem appealing in some maps that have a split middle, so like Ai.Mi Zap or Taito Temple for instance, if you're feeling a little spicy on that end, but Switch Kits very much so just supports you way better. You are looking to just dribble the core, control the core, keep it in your possession at all times, and you are not marking people, you are running past them. So, Quick Strike, obvious, Fight or Flight, it helps make you a viable win condition even if people are focusing you down, and of course, that's a refresh on flow state, your most important ability. Stats on stats can be pretty nice too, considering you get 5 hits from base drops, so you can hit the core 5 times, you can hit an enemy 5 times, you get so many stats so fast, and of course, if you are dribbling the core, you're building that up, but it comes with the risk of survival. Cast to Last is pretty good, because Flow State is a buff, Sonic Boom is a debuff. You hit, you extend your flow state, and you slow down people as you're whizzing by them. And just anything that extends your stagger. Of course, peak performance out of the stagger city traits is going to be the biggest thing. But fact is, you have little to no self-defense besides burning your ultimate, which you don't want to do for defense. You want to use that for your hard force. So, survival is the name of the game, and as such, Stagger Swagger lets you be as much of a menace as possible while towing the line between getting that insane boost of speed and not getting KO'd off the map. S.O.S gets a special prop here because if you are going to be taking Quick Strike, if you're going to be like dribbling back and forth, you're generating so much energy anyways. If you're dribbling on the corner of base drop or hitting enemies, you are just going to be making all of the plays anyway. S.O.S puts more of that attention on you. Now, even though Chrono Boost is by far the most important trait for Octavia, considering, you know, she gets the full benefits out of it, Aerial is buffs Sonic Boom, and although you don't get the damage buff from Super Surge, fact is, they're essential traits, you need them, prioritize them at all costs. Twin Drive, not necessarily the best, considering how, you know, Flow State's cooldown is already so long that you'll just be burning them back to back at that point then. You might as well be looking to buff up other parts of your kit, but it's still okay and decent. Sonic Boom, you're not really looking for damage with this, but fact is, if you had to really choose something, I mean, Glass Cannon exists for you to deal a little bit more and get more speed. Speed is the name of the game. And like I said before, Missile Propulsion is a little nice, and it helps out with the sneaky hits considering how almost invisible the Sonic Boom projectile really looks after the first hit, especially so. When it comes to base drop, you are probably not going to get extra specialized training going off on procs, because people will just evade it because they hear the audible sound cue. 1-2 punch can sometimes be decent, but it's the same vein as specialized training, but they are just alternate win conditions. If you catch somebody with no evade, you can easily convert an easy kill with Flow State, base drop, and just pull them towards the edge. What's better with base drop though is just extra special by a country mile. You activate Flow State, you have stats on stats, like I said, 5 hits, guaranteed on the core at the very least, and at the very least as well, people are going to fear it even if they're not near the center, near the edges. They might just burn an evade upon hearing it, and hey, that's free pressure every round. All that you are just trying to do is second striking the opponents, outspeeding them, and making any 3v1, 2v1 a 1v1, because you just run past them with your superior core control. You have a 1-2 combo in Strike Sonic Boom Strike with Quick Strike potentially, or with, you know, Strike Sonic Boom base drop to carry it to the corner. You have many different creative ways to attain control of the core, but it's all about making sure that you are set up for success and have a way to extend that pressure. Just especially so, once Flow State is gone, it is night and day between how you feel like you're playing Octavia. When Flow State is still up, even by the smallest sliver, any little hit will get you that speed boost back and gets you back in the game as the most important person to shut down, bar none. You are a snowball character, you are feast or famine, you are looking to just make sure that nobody else but you touches the core and forces the issue with the goalie. Well, if it isn't the maker of Captivating, an in-depth guide on how to play Rasmus herself. Rasmus occupies a unique niche in the Omega Strikers roster, having almost every single keyword covered by a part of his kit, meaning that he can function in almost every situation, no matter how good or bad his build may be when it comes to his turn for Awakening Draft. He prioritizes size more than anything, as Whiplash and Pendulum Swing both scale off of size. When you see goalie Rasmuses, you almost always see him taking Pauldrons for that extra size, and the fact is, the damage is pretty nice as well. Rasmus easily gets good bits of damage in thanks to Whiplashes being a recast AoE range, so traits like Tempo Swing or Stingers can easily pave the way for alternate win conditions if you want to focus more on the brawler aspect than core control. And of course, well, Pendulum Swing can benefit from being an impact. You are hitting a 1-2 strike Pendulum Swing against the core and possibly hitting an enemy. That means Hot Shot can scale extremely well with it. A Heavy Impact easily helps itself out if you're striking an enemy in the core, and even 1-2 Punch can deliver pretty fast core strikes if you're shooting in a straight line that goalies may not expect the speed of. You are looking for ways to retain core control advantage with Rasmus and dominate the field by just your sheer size and your ability to take down corners with your extreme dribbling of Whiplash, Recast, a Quick Strike to go with it, or control the pitch from across the field thanks to Death Touch being a almost universal lateral ability. Because of this, you are taking Switch Kits more often than not as Rasmus, but he can function pretty well with Magnetized Souls too if you want to play him more at a midfield and try to abuse his size. But I will give special props to map-specific pits for him. You can cheese with Pummelers for hitting people with Pendulum Swing off the side, but you're usually just using that to get the extra range on Ai.Mi Zap. Let's be real here. Vicious Vambrace also comes in pretty nice on Atlas's lab, because you pull people in with Pendulum Swing to the middle of the gravity well before detonating it, you have dealt 3/4 of their health damage, and guess what? If they don't have Vicious Vambrace themselves, now they are struggling to survive, and you can just easily heal the damage back by striking the core or hitting more people. It is free win conditioning, and people don't expect Rasmus as much on Atlas's lab as they do Ai.Mi Zap. Now, I do want to give Death Touch a lot of props here for being one of the most versatile abilities to build, considering it is a projectile and a creation. Yes, Core Strike Thief and the Rasmus's Treasure exist. I can play the footage again, and I think I will. Well, if you didn't know, now you know. But Specialized Training now makes Rasmus a Juliette chart at the corners at where the midfield orbs spawn on every single map. You can have Deadeye to increase that pressure 2,000-fold, and if you need to deny the creation traits from other creation strikers like Juno or Rune, Monumentalist and Timeless Trader aren't too bad, considering if your Death Touch misses and settles on the field, it's going to be there for a long time. Cast to Last is also a pretty sneaky pick for Rasmus, as the buff part will help extend his Whiplash, along with making Death Touch last longer on the field. And lastly, I want to give special priority to Missile Propulsion. This is a weird pick, and I only advise you to take it if you're comfortable with it, as your Death Touch angles completely change. The 70% extra range means your Death Touch will always hit the corner of the pitch, no matter where you're throwing it, from one side of the field to another, meaning you have to be spot on and be a complete Deadeye with your shots. Yes, the extra speed is pretty nice. The extra speed that you get from the power is nice too, but you have to be super reactionary when hitting your Death Touches if you're going to be using Missile Propulsion, and as such, you may need to also try it out in a game or two before really deciding if you want to even use it more in the future with Rasmus. Let's talk about Rune, the Shadow's Force, everybody. Main thing is that depending on whether you play him as goalie or forward, you are looking for a few different key options in your specific awakenings for your primary, is what I'm immediately thinking about here. When you're playing him as a goalie, you either see him as momentum boots, since you are reliant on getting back to the goal if you shadow swap from a near to a far place, depending on where you last put it, or sometimes strike shot for people just to get a little bit more range on your banish if you want to be more preventative in your measures. Forwards, more often than not, are switch kits, that way you can easily push the core to where your shadow is, swap to it, and then try to dribble it in, or Magnetized Souls if you have a much more offensive strike partner and want to cover the midfield line, putting your anomalies right behind them so they always have core control, like Juliette, Asher, or Etz, for instance. Of course, all the standard creation traits will apply to him, and it comes down to your choosing whether you like Monumentalist or Timeless Creator more. Of course, Monumentalist has a little bit more impact on its hits, meaning if you're looking for Banished into loading your entire kit on somebody who's banished, you might look for Monu. But Timeless Creator can also serve its purpose on some certain maps a lot better, like on the two configurations on Courier and Test Chamber. So if you think about the Atlas configuration, when you hit the very middle, you just put one Timeless Creator and it stays there forever. The Air configuration, you can easily just put it in any of the 3 lanes and it stays there forever with Timeless Creator. It just comes down to map choice and situation, but of course, if you can just choose both of them independently, you will take them. Hotshot, same thing as Juno as before, you are just going to be getting as many hits as you can on your anomalies, and even if you have core control, if you want to get extra speed and even hit your own cooldown, place the anomaly behind you, and instead of striking forwards, strike back so the core gets extra speed, hits your anomaly, and triggers your hotshot benefits. Cast to Last, of course, is wonderful because of, well, Banish being longer, your creations being longer, it's self-explanatory, and sneaky enough, you can play Rune with the energy battery builds, considering how many times you would be surprised. I can at least consistently get it once, twice a match to where you put the anomaly in the corner and the core just bounces back and forth on it. You generate so much energy that putting yourself in a position to win just by egoist or being a battery build for your teammates with fire up is really, really nice. And of course, any uptime with creations are going to be good, so I put Spark of cooldown. It's pretty self-explanatory here. Now, what Rune, of course, lacks is his own self-defense options, unless he wants to banish. He can run away, but he has to sacrifice his uptime for his anomalies to deal damage otherwise, and he can't really push anybody else away. So I put Reverb as an example of if you're really struggling against more offensive strikers, because swapping to your shadow is good defensively, but it can easily place you out of position for any setup plays you're trying to put out there. Now, Fight or Flight, I'm putting here as just Sweat Kits 2.0, you're getting that speed boost off of it, and sometimes it may also be nice in case you banish somebody, and you have enough damage off of that with like Specialized or something to just deal, or like to stagger them so you can get a refresh on your shadow swap, that comes down to it. And depending on, you may just want to outspeed somebody by just swapping to your shadow and running past them, so among giants, you know, Glass Cannon, or even Twin Drive can actually be pretty nice for just keeping your momentum everywhere on the map. Because you don't care too much about the power of your hits and just making sure that you cut off the angles, Prime Time is wonderful, Rapid Fire is wonderful, if you banish somebody, 1-2 Punch can be wonderful, or even if it just bounces off of the core. Once again, I will put out there, put the anomaly behind you and strike the core back to it instead of just striking forwards. You get the 1-2 Punch benefits and Hot Shot as well. Demo can be nice, especially if you are very proactive in looking for your banish plays, and it just, well, once again, more uptime. Otherwise, you'd be surprised how many times Team Player can actively proc in case it gets, in case you get an anomaly bounce that can easily lead back to your goalie or to you, etc., etc. When it comes to banish, you're looking just for those little moments where even if you don't have any extension traits for banish, and that you only get to banish the enemy for 1 second, maybe 2, just because you don't have any chrono boost or anything like that. The fact is, you just want extra special to just threaten that kill opportunity. You can, like, if you have extra special, you are now more open up to just be cheesy, strike for Juliette angles on the corner, and just be stupid in that case then. Same thing with orb, with your orb cooldown traits, anything like that is pretty helpful in that regard. And on the cheesier side of things, if you banish somebody and you're playing forward, or you banish somebody on one side of the goal and teleporting away to the another, I mean, Deadeye can sometimes work, but you're really looking for complete cheesy one-hit kills. You're looking at missile propulsion just for longer banishes if you're a strike shot goalie, for instance, and aerials falls into that same basket just for getting the secondary effect of longer projectiles, so just more longer banishes. Because sometimes people will see the banish, but they won't realize how far it goes if you have an extension trait like these, and these can catch them off guard. Once again, this is cheesy, and I would not recommend it unless you're already retaining core control enough, or you have extra special to be able to just throw caution to the wind and see what plays you can make off of these. Vyce is all about the game of attrition, wearing down all of her enemies if they stick too close together with her AoE ability kit, and being able to capitalize on the lack of energy if players have to use their evades or core flips to just dodge her supernova. She functions pretty well as a glass cannon goalie thanks to a jet button, seeing how Thunderstruck's recast duration lasts the exact same as the jet button duration as well, so you can easily zip back and forth when you choose to do so. Though I do see strike shots sometimes if you see an opening, awakening like missile propulsion, and you really want to take advantage of your power chord's range. With everything being an impact ability, you want to take heavy impact. Notably so. I mean, it's literally her guitar. It is one of the best awakenings for her. You deal damage, you get cooldown reduction, and it does a lot more with how many times Power Chord is going to chain, or if Thunderstruck hits 2 or more people. Hot Shot's also pretty nice on her too, as you don't even have to hit the chord with the main Power Chord skill shot. If the chain hits the core, guess what? That's also cooldown reduction, and Perfect Form also comes to that same agreement there. Because Vyce has so much poke damage that's constantly going to be off cooldown, especially if you have any of those CD traits sourced above, Tempo Swing and Stinger are great for just making sure that everybody's stagger is just going down gradually during the round, and meaning you can always take full advantage of every single time they have to burn their energy for an evade. Prize Fighter and Demolitionist also function pretty well in this regard, as, you know, quality of your hits, you're doing more damage, and you don't feel as guilty burning all of your cooldowns if it means you hit the goal barrier to do it again. When it comes to Thunderstruck itself, Super Surge and, Fight or Flight. Pretty obvious. More range, more damage, refreshes on staggers. You are just constantly making sure that you can convert on these kills, or just make sure that people have to respect how much damage you're doing with your 120 Thunderstruck, or even more, and they have to burn their evades, which leads to you getting more Supernova procs. Aerials does get you the distance, but it helps out your power chord range more, so it's kind of a nicer alternate win condition of it helping two of your abilities in one if you don't get the opportunity. And of course, Twin Drive's pretty nice in general. I mean, it's Twin Drive. 2 Thunderstruts, that's 2 damaging points. Never gonna say no to that. In the vein of attrition, power chord just, the core ones. Prime Time, Rapid Fire, any cooldown, so I just included the Spark right there. And like I said in the opening, Missile Propulsion can easily let you charge from across the field and get some pretty sneaky KOs sometimes, especially if you're running Pummels. Now, when it comes to Supernova, both of the core special traits are great. Quantity, quality, however it is, 1-2 punch is pretty nice as a sleeper hit, as if you have any type of power, you can just power towards somebody into just tapping Supernova, and you can deal over half of their stagger. Or a little bit more than half of their stagger in one blow. So if they think they're safe, just hit them, with just power towards Supernova, or Thunderstruck hit into tap the Supernova. Because more often than not, tapping the ability means they won't always hear the sound cue for when it boots up, and as such, you can easily catch players unaware. When it comes to the forward awakening, forward gear, since I didn't cover that, like I said, Siphoning Wand is pretty stupid. You really don't have to take Switch Kits or Magnetized, but you can if you want to play a more midfield role and try to control more. But Thunderstruck easily controls a lot of the field for you, and Power Chord is able to stunt the core's speed if you even hit the striker trying to dribble with it. So you have pretty offensive pressure, and you should be looking to capitalize on that anytime as a core win condition. Pummels can work too if, once again, if you get impact traits, so heavy impact or missile propulsion, to find good pushes at the edge of the map, but it just depends on where you are. Especially so if you are getting a lot more staggers and it's a map like Taiko Temple or Ai.Mi Zap, to where the kill angles are a lot more opened up because the map itself is a lot smaller due to congested space and missing terrain. Pum Wars can work, but it's just basically, do you think you have enough damage to stagger people to make use of Pum Wars at that point? Or do you think you need more just consistent damage across the board, especially if people start building up stagger traits with Siphoning Wand? Your choice at the end of the day there, but my personal preference is Siphoning Wand. S. That's the joke. S, the eccentric brawler, is one of the most notorious goal bullies in all of Omega Strikers, able to keep his ultimate pressure up way past what a one single evade would do, meaning enemies have to keep track of their own evasion and how much energy they have left unless they want to eat a fistful of stagger damage straight to the core. Primarily, you'll see him only in the forward position, but sometimes you may see on Demon Dice or more brawl-heavy maps as a goalkeeper, abusing powerhouse potions and the extra power you get to just stop hard forces with all of your stunning abilities. Primarily, you'll be seeing him either taking Vicious Vambraces or Siphoning Wand to really capitalize on his brawl-heavy playstyle. You can sometimes see Switch Kits, but that really puts him at a liability on his own survivability at that point, and sometimes Pummels depending on map. If you really don't feel that confident and you accidentally get auto-filled as extra goalie, momentum boots could help with that speed deficiency, but since you're going to be rolling so much, you might just get that speed boost taken out from under you most of the time. You are looking at anything to generate energy and keep you in the game here. So Quick Strike obviously works the best for X. Anything that has CDR traits, so you can see Perfect Form is up here, Heavy Impact for Bell Ringer hits, and for that reduced cooldown, Egoist for retaining your own evasion, and anytime you burst, you immediately get it back, so you just keep building up energy with Quick Strike, Egoist, Prayer and Catalyst, or Fire Up, and you really just got a combination going, and just anything to help out his power for the quantity and quality of his hits. Speed, of course, is going to be the next biggest thing, but you can also just stand in front of the goalie's face and just make their lives miserable, especially if they're a lot more passive like Kai and don't have that much weight to defend themselves. Unstoppable if it ever gets rotated back in is wonderful for Ets, because now you always know for a fact where you're going and you can't be knocked away from a perfect ball ringer hit. Alongside Nice Edge, since you always want to be forcing your bull rushes on the corners of the map where nobody can literally challenge you. Biggest thing here is that you are looking for ways to make your Ets Maximus pop off. Bull Rush doesn't necessarily need big range, since, like, although it could be nice to take Super Surge or so, fact is, it's a long wind-up ability, and if you're already in the, and you already have to put yourself in the right position to set up for it. Meaning, enemies have to be stunned as you wind it up, or you already have to just be on the corner as the core comes to you. As such, Super Surge, once again, highest priority, Gloss Cannon just for that speed and attack power, Tempo Swing to really help you out a little bit more and keeping your own life up since you're going to be charging into enemies always, and Fight or Flight Trade for helping out with Switch Kit's budget diet, and also if anybody gets staggered thanks to you punching them over and over again, well, it's a telegraph charge, but it still is a charge that can potentially kill. Bowringer scales off of your size, of course, so you're just looking at Big Fish or both differently, and with it being an impact, both diff gets helped out here alongside that heavy impact as previously mentioned. Remember, it stuns, so you don't mind Prime Time taking away a little bit of the power, it's just great in general, but you're looking at Ets Maximus as the next biggest thing. Specialized training may seem weird to consider thinking about it as a buff by itself, but remember, it is coded as melee, not as just a buff by itself, so you are just going to be hitting harder with all of your strikes. Pair that up with the previously mentioned Twitch Strike. Now you're just going to be hitting people almost twice as much in the same amount of duration. Cast Loss is great because it's a buff. Chrono Boost is great because it helps out your bull rush and it extends your duration as a buff. Stagger Swagger keeps you in the face, so anytime you ult, you don't have to get out of there, or you don't have to use it, or you don't get it used and then get pushed out because you have no stagger. You want to keep hitting people, and sometimes it can get you killed. So, the defensive traits of Stagger, Swagger, and Catalyst are great deterrents, because now, if anybody tries to brawl you, it is a lose-lose for them overall. But you are just looking for ways to keep carrying the core alongside your way, and make sure that nobody else can get it. One crucial thing, once again when it comes to Ets, and primarily on the special side of things, is that you are working off of getting as much energy as possible thanks to Quick Strike. And a little tip that many people may not realize is especially if you're in a 1v1 with the goalie, or you're the goalie themselves, and you need to out-mind game the opponent, say, sending the core up, but tricking them by thinking they'll send it down, you can strike the core and immediately ult. That refreshes your strike cooldown immediately, so you can do this combo within literally a second. Strike, ult, strike, and either, out-mind game somebody into moving into the wrong direction right out of range, or even just using it as a refresh for if you bull rush, for instance, you can just, bull rush, Ets Maximus, strike somebody striking on the edge, or just, exactly so, just strike the core one direction as you Ets Maximus, and then strike again to stun everybody when you're near the enemy side. Ets has a lot of nuance to his kit, and he is very telegraphed in his intentions, but the thing is, if he ever gets the core, he's never letting go of it, and neither is his energy bar and his stagger pressure on top of you. You need to either make up for ways for how your speed's lacking, or literally bulk up your power and make it so you pick out one person, usually the goalie in particular, and force them out of the game, making it that much easier to just push the core right on in. Let's talk about Zentaro, the Wandering Blade, and my own personal permaban for a myriad of reasons. He seeks to retain core control through his pretty good dash range thanks to his special and his empowered 8-hit passive strike. He is able to dish out a good amount of damage through Battle of Attrition thanks to Slice and Dice, and knows when to go all in thanks to IA Rush, building off of every single hit he gets from the core and enemies. Usually you'll see him taking up the forward position with Siphoning Wand to work off this Battle of Attrition, but if he wants to work more off core control or if he feels like he can't deal with creations of the enemy team, don't be surprised if he takes Magnetized Souls to better control the midfield, or even Switch Kits if he feels like he can control the core with Strike, Slice and Dice in the corner, and then just carry it through with his passive empowered strike. If you see him taking the goalie position, it'll usually be for longer lane maps or places he can cut off with half of the map, like Night Market or Oni Village, usually taking a jet button to extend the range of his dash and snap back at a moment's notice, or even Strike Shot to give himself a projectile for once, and also to empower the projectile from his empowered 8-hit strike. Whenever it comes to Zentaro in a general sense, you'll be looking at ways to either enhance your overall hit abilities for attrition once again, or finding ways to work off CDR, so instead of power spiking, you are literally just going to be reducing your cooldowns throughout the match. 1-2 punch is great because your empowered strike hits enemies that also counts towards the 1, and then you can hit Slice and Dice for the 2 afterwards with Oni Blade as the 2. Plus, Oni's Blade hits multiple times, so you're just immediately going to get the rewards of this effect. Heavy Impact is everything is an impact ability. Bolt Diff because that empowers your impacts. Perfect Form because you're always trying to be hitting anybody, not just the core with this, and even Hot Shot to an extent there. Crucially though, you'll be looking at Demolitionist as a core way to enact your all-in plans, since you can just Oni's Blade at the beginning to win the first touch guaranteed almost always, before charging up your empowered strike, and then just starting off from there. Get a dual barrier from there on, you already have your Ai.Mi and Slice and Dice back, and then it just cascades from there. You just keep the pressure going. On that note, if they ever get rotated back in, Tempo Swing and Stinger are great options since you'll just be hitting people constantly. You're just ticking away at their overall match statter regardless of how many statter traits that they get. And even Knife's Edge can be great for setting yourself up with the speed boost before dashing in with Ai.Mi, since you'll still get that offensive 40% bonus power before going in with the rest of your kit. Now, I think, in my personal opinion, Super Surge is the most essential thing for a Zentaro to ever get. If you ever see it in Opening Awakenings, you can't usually expect a Zentaro to be taking that guaranteed. It extends the range of his dash, and it's definitely one of the best dash abilities in the game, being a long range with an extension trait that goes almost a third of the pitch, while being a long range stun. Anybody that gets hit during the stun not only is, out of the play, but it also contributes to his passive hit empowered strike, meaning he can easily just have two abilities comboed into each other, Ai.Mi empowered strike, and force his way past goalies just by himself if he finds the right angle. Now, that's not to say aerials or chrono boost can't work as well. If you need to deny these splits, these can still work for extending your range as it's the most crucial ability in your kit. Aerials helps out just a little bit more than chrono boost because you have no buffs or debuffs in your kit, and the projectile range does actually feed into your passive empowered strike. Twin Drive is just great in general just because, well, what's better than 1 empowered dash range strike thanks to Super Surge, 2 empowered dash range strikes thanks to Super Surge and Twin Drive. And a niche pick, if it also gets rotated in, is unstoppable actually. Because if you dash and hit the corner of the arena and you get hit at all during your dash, that can count as a little bit of knockback, killing you when you hit the arena's edge. This can actually shore up this your defensive liability here if you ever find yourself having to dash to the corner of the arena or hit the middle hole of Ai.Mi Zap without realizing it because you need to control the core, and it's just a little bit more niche if you find yourself falling into this trap many times. When it comes to Slice and Dice, Prime Time, Rapid Fire, of course, going to be staples for you since you're just looking to hit anybody off of it, as even if you're just hitting an enemy and not the core, you're still building up your passive 8-hit strike, so it's just good to just keep hitting people over and over again to build towards your power spike. Adrenaline Rush is also pretty good too, since you're just going to be working to attrition to converting kills, so that's already 1 second off all of your cooldowns, plus you'll be getting it completely refunded once you get a KO. And Status Swag is also good too. The fact that you can strafe while using Slice and Dice means any extra speed helps you keep in that sweet spot range for hitting enemies, and even if you get staggered yourself, well, now you can stay in their face without being worried too much of KO yourself. You get to keep the pressure on them without relinquishing any of your own because you have your survival trait. Now, Oni's Blade is very, very good for for core control first and foremost before pressuring enemies second. You want to look at extra special more often than not, but specialized training is pretty good too, as you will always be forcing out evades or even core flips for people who are unaware or scared of your offensive capabilities at that time. I already mentioned it before, but Hot Shot's pretty nice as well for just getting your CDR on Oni's Blade itself, because you want to be using it as both offensive and defensive purposes. Offensively, you can easily control corners or even use it to burn time when you're waiting for the goal barrier hit to open up the goal, and it also boosts you up extra energy and hits for your passive and if you're ever running energy build. So I'm immediately going to point out Egoist as the main point here, since if it's just the core itself, you're still building up energy and your passive. Hit an enemy in there, that's energy and passive. Hitting both, well, you are just generating a boatload of energy, and you still have your passive empowered strike, and if that fails as well, you also have Egoist to just follow up where the core is and burst right afterwards. You lay the pressure on, know when to go all in as Zentaro, and just never let them get the core back. Remember, Oni's Blade is the biggest cornerstone in denying enemy core control and keeping it on their side of the field before you decide to go in with IA Rush. You are forcing the issue with them and making sure that they have to respect you for whenever you're in their face, because you have ways to get out of it. If you have Egoist and you spend Oni's Blade to just keep the core on their side, you still have your evades and extra energy to proc off of it. IA Rush, once again, you need an instant trait to really make it worth your while, but it is night and day between how you feel you're playing Zentaro with an instant trait and without. And that will do it for this video on Awakenings today. Phew! What was initially going to be a 1-hour video transitioned into a 2-hour video as I was editing. But thank you everybody for staying through to the end if you're still here. And as always, be sure to give a like if you enjoyed my content, leave a comment if you agree, disagree with my picks, or you even found a niche build that I didn't get to cover. And if you could, give me a subscribe if you really enjoy my content and would like to see more Omega Strikers or variety in the future. I'm streaming live on Twitch, a lot of my own footage I'm using in these videos here, and I'm planning on making more School of Omega Strikers in 2024. But at least for today, in 2023, this will be the last lesson here until the holiday break is over. So, as always, wherever you are, wherever you may be, whether you're on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, or more, it's been your Wonderful Wind Mage, the Cruz Ship Captain, Chartreuse Proxy, ever at your service, and long live Omega Strikers!